I believe that's probably
elusive.
happened
Yes.
thousands of times to me, literally, in the 30 years I've been guiding out in there. It probably
Maybe.
has.
You don't, yeah.
I
You
mean,
can't know, right? That's the
you
whole
can't
thing.
know.
Yeah.
But it's opportunity to
Mm.
simply step back 5 steps and not be seen or remove themselves from that area, and it's so dense that I can't see that movement, I can't hear it, whatever. There's other animals in the area that it can use to mask where it's moving. That those types of things don't exist in a lot of these metro areas. It's a chance that
Right.
if it feeds in A area and it beds down in B area and it gets water from C area and it has those three elements it needs to survive, to move from one area to the next, it just doesn't have the ability to be elusive like they would in heavier wooded areas. So there's a
Agree.
chance they do get caught with their pants down, maybe more so in those areas.
I, I, I just don't think they're in those areas, period. Like, it seems to me that the remote habitats is really the only place they should be as an elusive and rare creature. They're not. They're not just going to be hanging around even rural towns um, all that much. They might would drift in here and there. That might explain some of the credible sightings. Um, but as far as like just existing there, I think they would mostly have to exist the majority of their time in the
So this stems
the
this
relatively remote areas.
that stems to our conversation we were having a couple weeks ago, where let's just assume, let's say 150, 200 years ago, they were a little bit higher in numbers. They were a little bit more spread out across the continental United States simply because there was less of us
Or
building
maybe a
giant
lot.
cities,
Yeah,
right?
maybe a lot
They could
more.
have been
Yeah.
spread pretty evenly, actually.
Yeah, they
But
could
as
traverse. Yeah.
but as they decline in numbers, at the same time we settle, it could be that you end up with these little isolated populations of them kind of getting, so to speak, stranded in areas, right?
Yeah,
It,
yeah.
again, would
Okay.
have to be straight.
That's
Yeah.
the only way I could explain it, Pat, because like I say,
Yeah.
when we were talking about black bears, if a black bear could choose where it lives, it would choose New Hampshire, Vermont, Montana, Idaho, British Columbia. It would choose Manitoba. It wouldn't choose Florida. Okay, it wouldn't. None of them would be in Florida. And yet there's a pretty healthy population of black bears in Florida. How does that happen, right? Because they
Yeah,
were
they're
in big
stranded.
numbers,
Yeah.
and as those numbers drew back in some areas, it's not like they can say, hey, let's take an Amtrak up to Vermont this weekend and get the hell out of this humid swamp, right? Since we're covered in black air.
Yeah.
They'd all leave if they could, I would think, if they knew there was a better place, right? But they don't. And
Well,
so
so
now
you're-
when
Well,
we
and
start trying to figure that out and understand why, we have to start saying, how come there would be a Bigfoot in a fairly populated area? Or why would there be Bigfoot reported in these hotter, humid climates? Seems like the forage would be they'd be more comfortable here
Well,
than
that's,
there.
yeah,
These
that's a different
conversations,
discussion.
There's
Yeah.
also the suburban deer herd, which is larger. I mean, the North American deer herd. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's bigger than it ever has been.
it is
right
bigger
now.
than it ever has been.
And that's
Most cities are actually paying law enforcement agencies and stuff to eradicate. Like for instance, in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where I grew up, they're killing 50 deer in the city limits every fall just to get rid of them, because if they don't, people are smashing into them with their cars.
yeah.
Oh yeah, don't get me started.
They'd rather harvest them and give
I mean,
the
deer
meat to
lo-
the food pantry and feed hungry people, right?
Deer love suburbia. Deer love suburbia.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because they're safe. They're not hunted there.
Right.
For
You
the
can
most
tame
part.
a deer.
Yeah.
You could train a deer to walk up to your apple tree and eat apples out of your hand every damn day if you wanted to.
If I had sweet corn in my hand right now, I bet I could get a deer to come on camera. Like, I mean, I could turn this into a petting zoo. They're right there in the tree line.
But
right
for the
now.
most part, they don't
Yeah.
risk their ability to survive by not eating out of your hand.
Right. I think one of the few predatory threats they face in suburbia is Sasquatch.
You were
Again,
talking.
back to that. Yeah, I don't think so.
I mean,
I just don't think so. They would just be.
But
They
they
would
don't
be a
have- I
known
mean-
animal. They would be known. Like, why can't we find Bigfoot? Because they don't live in suburbia. Like, they would just be a known animal if they were that close all the time.
I can
But
shoot
again, rare and
most of
elusive
these-
doesn't fit that at all.
Most of the areas in the northern half of the United States, if I shot a deer and left it sit in a tree grove within a couple miles of a fairly established city, it would get eaten by coyotes overnight before a Sasquatch would ever come close to it. So I don't know that. I mean, there's just so many predators out there that most people who don't have a threshold of experience and knowledge of it, they would never consider that to be the case. But in about 75% of this country, you could kill a deer and leave it, and overnight, everything's gone except the bones because 8 coyotes sat there and ate it all night long.
Yeah,
Coyotes and possums and everything.
Jeff, what state are you in, Jeff?
I grew up in South Dakota. I guide elk hunters out of Montana and Idaho primarily, some Wyoming.
Hey, I saw that picture the other day you posted with that big elk. But
Yeah,
you
that was-
you mentioned
Force
black
perspective.
bears. Yeah, you mentioned black bear earlier. If they could choose where they live, like I'm down here in kind of southeast Oklahoma, more south central, southeast area. Growing up, I've lived here all my life, never saw a bear. And you didn't really ever hear of anybody seeing them much down here. Now they've moved back into the state. We have a bear season now. More towards the central area of the state, the town where I have my music store, there was one in town in somebody's trash dumpster last year.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're saying anywhere east of I-35, you've got a good chance of seeing a black bear. I've ran into them twice down in the Comanche Mountains. Fortunately, they both ran away as soon as they saw me, which is what I want them to do. But
It's
anyway,
usually
the
what they do. Yeah.
point is population in the areas, they change over time.
Mm-hmm.
How that may relate to something like a Sasquatch, I don't know.
Well, it does relate greatly to bears, and this is something that I really enjoyed having a discussion about. I'd love to have a roundtable about it with some actual Department of Natural Resources of people who actually study these bears, because the example that I use a lot of times is if you're familiar with the show The Revenant, where Hugh Glass is attacked by a grizzly bear. It happened in South Dakota. South Dakota, 90% of the state is flat cornfields, okay? Now, prior to us tilling it up and planting corn, there's a lot of river bottoms and oak groves and things like that. And then you've got the Black Hills, which leads into the Rocky Mountains pretty quickly. But, where Mount Rushmore is and stuff in the Black Hills and the Badlands areas, I could see where 200 years ago you might have grizzlies, but where Hugh Glass is encountered, there hasn't been a grizzly bear there for 150 years, okay? But if you look in Montana, the eastern portion of Montana is flat prairie land where you have a lot of upland bird hunters, pheasant hunters, grouse hunters, and they're walking in these milo fields of 7-foot tall milo and coming up on 8 and 9 foot tall grizzly bears that are starting to live there again. They're not in the mountains of Montana. They've moved 100 miles into these prairie lands of Montana just over the last 3 years. And these biologists are baffled as to why is this happening. And I'm thinking there's a cyclic thing there that maybe when Hugh Glass was here in that time period, they were here. And for whatever reason, they aren't. And now whatever's happening, all of a sudden they seem to be evolving back into these areas. And I think there's cyclic natures to how animals move and find forage and all of that,
Well, there's that too, but I'll throw this in as well. You go back to Hugh Glass's time, and back there was a period of time where we of European descent were killing everything that moved.
Well, that's
Okay,
one
like
of the things
black
that that movie featured on was if you look at those, he was a trapper, and you look at all the animals they were trapping out of those river bottoms, the beaver, the foxes, all of that. That probably had a big impact on apex predators that lived in those areas. You're affecting a large portion of the forage base that they would exist on.
Well, yeah, you are. But the thing is, now, things like that are more regulated. Places that were originally the natural habitat and natural range of these animals, like black bear, grizzly bear, I think they're kind of moving back into these areas. Like here, I remember 15 years ago, I saw a mountain lion coming home one day. No, not 15. That was further back than that. I was coming home from a gig, and a park ranger guy said, there's no mountain lions here. You saw a bobcat. I'm like, I'm not a knucklehead. I know what a mountain lion is. Now it's fairly common. People have been catching them on their game cameras and stuff out on their deer plots. Just not even a mile from where I'm sitting at my house here. About 5 years ago, my daughter and I were driving, and a mountain lion ran in the road in front of us. Not close enough to hit it, but we both saw it. And I remember she goes, "That wasn't a coyote." I'm like, "No, that was a mountain lion."
There's so many mountain lions being sighted in Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma. That middle portion stretch of central United States rather than just in the northern United States. And I think it's really showing us that you don't need mountains to have mountain lions. I mean,
no, not at all.
They may prefer a forage base that's there, but for whatever reason, when you get enough of them in a certain area, those males that aren't the alpha males, they're very territorial. So they need their own little 10 or 15 square miles, right? And they'll move and they'll move and they'll move. We had a mountain lion population that was starting to establish itself not far from me here in eastern South Dakota, which they should not be here. And you know what they were feeding on? There was a giant hog farm operation where the guy contracted hogs with the government, and he would raise them to like 70 pounds and then sell them off, right? You know how many young piglets die? He'd lose 10, 12 of them a day, right? And he'd just throw them in a pile. And the number of bald eagles and the number of mountain lions that established themselves within 10 miles of that farm was stupid. Because their favorite food in the world was dead baby piglets.
Wow.
Hey, there's another animal that I'm seeing a lot more of here is bald eagles. Growing up, I had never saw one down here in this part of Oklahoma. Now they're very common.
They're getting common.
It's like these animals, they don't recognize state lines and stuff. They're gonna move where the food is.
Them so long.
Yeah.
Let me
just reestablish them.
So I can introduce Tate Hieronymus is in the house. What picture is that on profile?
It's this amazing Photoshop of Dr. Grant leaning on Jeff Goldblum's like bare chest.
Oh, I see it now. Oh my God. I'm like, wait, is that really Tate?
No, but
crazy. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
He won't be showing himself. He says he's in the hot tub.
Yeah, I'm in the hot tub at my house in South Florida, downing some Guinness. I thought I'd join in on this conversation.
Yeah, don't.
So what do you think?
Yeah,
Why
I don't want to
can't
see
we
you.
find?
I don't want to see you in a hot tub, man.
I don't think it is.
We went through, lack of evidence. We were talking about remote habitats. You have people who have been out there in no man's land and have seen nothing. But we have people who are in parks and in campgrounds right off the side of highways who have had their encounters. And that, encompasses a lot of the sightings.
that just
Most
makes
of the sightings are not from Bigfooters. Let's be
yeah,
very
that
clear.
makes
Yeah.
sense. A lot of people seeing Sasquatch in parks and closer to urban areas because there's a lot more people in those areas versus actual people going deep in the woods. So that makes a lot of sense.
Well, I
Right.
think the vast majority of credible encounters do not come from like urban. Definitely don't come from urban areas.
Well, I mean, I didn't mean urban,
They
but
might come from. They might be in rural areas sometimes.
I mean,
I
we
mean,
could take like a couple hours outside of an urban area.
yeah, right.
Yeah, that's what I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean,
If
it's
you-
like it seems to me that most credible encounters are pretty much out there in the middle of nowhere, just like Jeff's was. Some random island, you know.
I like you looking at statistics with mountain lions, and the only reason is because by nature they are very elusive. They're very
Yes.
elusive. That 999 times out of 1,000, they will choose not to be around a human, and they will quietly extract themselves from the presence of a human. They don't want to be around you. However, when
But they
you look
will
at states
engage.
like, if you look at states like Montana, when it comes to Missoula and Butte, Montana, and Billings, Montana, Big Sky, Wyoming, these areas where there are cities, not huge metropolises, but there's cities. The majority of the sightings are there was one walking along the fence by the grade school. There was one on a Ring doorbell walking through somebody's front yard. Somebody saw one outside of wherever. It's not out in the wilderness that it's happening. However, that does not mean there's more mountain lions in the metro area than there are in the wilderness area.
Right.
There's
Have you
more
ever seen-
eyes. There's more eyes to see them.
Right. Have you ever
And
seen?
that
Have you,
really is evident
Yeah.
in the big.
have you ever seen the clip from it was a live news shot somewhere? I think probably out west somewhere, and the mountain lion just walked right up to the reporter, and this was live. She was live on air. And she didn't know what to do, and she was being complete dumbass about it. But it just walked right up to her and kept going. It was
There's
I
a-
think
yeah.
There's
dog.
a dash cam video of a sheriff's deputy driving through Montana town, or I think it was a Wyoming town. He was in a small town, and you can see a car like a block in front of him. It's at night. You can see the taillights. And he's on his radio talking about, yeah, I'm going to pull this guy over. He doesn't have an up-to-date tag, whatever. And right in front of him, crossing the street, is this huge mountain lion. And he's like, holy smokes, this mountain lion just walked across the street in front of me, and I got him on my dash cam.
Yeah.
And it's like, nobody's out in the wilderness at that moment saying, whoa, a mountain lion just walked in front. It's happening because that's where the eyeballs and the cameras and the Ring doorbells and the dash cams are. And
Right.
I have to believe that when you look at the numbers of sightings reported in Florida versus the number of people that exist there, and then the number of exciting sightings in Washington State versus the number of people that are there, if you're going to try to tell me that there's 6 times more Bigfoot in Florida than Washington State, I'll tell you to go stick your thumb up your butt because you're wrong.
Well, yeah. Well, if
I-
we're going by
Yes.
the BFRO database, is Washington State, I believe, is number 1, and Florida is either number 2 or 3.
Yeah.
As far as the BF, and
Florida-
that kills me about Florida,
Yeah,
because
I just, when
there's
you
like
compare
20 million
Florida
people.
to Northern California and
Yeah.
Oregon and Idaho and Montana and these places that really don't differ that much from BC and Washington, except they don't have a fraction of the number of people in Florida, right? And
I think a lot of it is. I don't think there's a huge population of Bigfoots in Florida, if there are any. I think what it is the different groups of people seeing the same individual or same family group in Florida, not the other way around.
if there,
Yeah,
let
I
me
mean,
just play the
well, they're
advocate
just not
here.
there.
Let me play devil's advocate. Because if that's true, then the ability to film them, to get them on drone footage, on thermal, the ability to track them, the ability to box them in, should have happened by now.
The
Absolutely.
problem is with Florida, there's just like down here, like in South Florida, it's all swamp. So unless you have a swamp buggy to get into those areas, you won't even know there's a Sasquatch there. Even if you had a thermal drone, then you got these like little islands in the middle of the Everglades they can get up onto and hide underneath. So these things could be anywhere. Then you got like Central Florida, where there's a lot more tourists. You got like Tampa and Orlando, but there's not that much wilderness for them to be in. Then you got further north, like Ocala, which still there's a lot of people. And yeah, you can get a lot more areas up there, but I just think there's way too many people. And Florida is like, yeah, there's a lot of people, but the state is not that big. You can go coast to coast on Florida in like a couple hours.
Yeah, that's kind of the point, though. There's like 20 million people that live there, and it's not that big of a state. North to south, it kind of is.
That's why I
but-
say I see Florida as having some very thick, inhospitable, not easy to navigate areas.
Agreed.
But if you look at the square mileage of truly remote areas compared to the narrative and the number of sightings and all that, it doesn't work.
Yeah, especially for a primate. Primates are not like swamp dwelling creatures.
If you are waist deep
Yeah.
in the swamp and you hear an airboat coming, what do?
Right?
I mean, the amount of time and energy it would take to get to sufficient cover, unless you put a straw in your mouth and go underwater and breathe through it for 20 minutes, how do you evade not being seen from practically miles away by the airboaters and the people that are out in those areas?
So freaking flat down here. All you need to do is get a high vantage point and with some binoculars, and you're golden.
Yeah, exactly. Bigfoot's not known for like just wandering around wide open areas that are very inhospitable, like swamps that are more adapted for aquatic type creatures or low crawling things. I don't know, like alligators.
That's what I was just gonna say.
Yeah.
I would have to assume that when they look at risk versus reward, which has to be a sophisticated process for them to be elusive and remain alive for so long, right? In those elements, it has to be able to identify what its threats are. And when you can't see an alligator underneath the water, it just doesn't seem likely that it would spend considerable amounts of time in the depth of water that an alligator could be that you wouldn't be able to detect it.
Yeah, those two things don't shake
That just
hands.
doesn't make sense to me.
No. The fact that there's so many alligators in Florida that there's any kind of idea of an undiscovered 8-foot tall freaking primate wandering around there and not having to deal with that on a daily basis.
Well, that's
kind
what
of ridiculous.
Make sense to me is when you say I don't get how they could exist down there, and people are like, "Well, look at when there's so many swamps and it's like you factor in the number of alligators, and you say you got to get through these swamps to find a place to eat, sleep, whatever, hunt. I don't think your life expectancy is shorter than a door gunner in Vietnam. Okay, it doesn't
absolutely.
work.
Yeah. If you
let's move on to the next one. Let's move it on to the behavior, because we talked about this a little bit, but when I mean behavior hypothesis, what I'm talking about is, are they intelligent? Are they intelligent enough to know that they're avoiding us? That they are intelligent to the point where they're staying elusive at night only? Are they bred that way to be nocturnal? People see them nighttime and daytime, but it seems like mostly in the evening is when we're trying to capture them out there roaming around. So,
well, that's a part of the fun, sexy Indiana Jones people thing of it, but they would have to be intelligent enough to avoid us. I mean, that's law. They would have to be intelligent enough to avoid us.
I mean,
that's part of being elusive.
Yeah, deer's smart enough to know where not to be hunted, and how much more so would a Bigfoot think, using its brain power to avoid humans?
Yeah.
Well, the other
And-
thing you got to factor in too is, I look at as the parent of a 19 and 20-year-old sons, how much time I've spent teaching them how to fish, how to hunt, things like that. But the majority of their time is spent, whether it's going to soccer practice, or whether they're going to jujitsu class, or they're sitting online playing games with their kids and stuff. Now imagine if we live in the woods and 365 days we're in the woods. Every moment of every day for me is teaching them how to survive. There is no soccer practice. There is no video game. Everything they're taught and spend time in those family groups with is how to survive. And when you look at other animals, I don't believe deer are born with an understanding of how thermals work and how scent rises in a thermal up a hill in the afternoon, and in the morning it's coming down that hill regardless of if there's a wind or not. Okay? I don't think deer are born getting that. They learn that, right? They learn that somehow. And I think that when we look at their behavior, their learned behavior from their clan and those that are raising these young, I think that's the one thing we failed to grasp, is how advanced that could be, because we don't spend that much time doing anything in our life. That's all they focus on, because if they didn't, they wouldn't be here.
I mean,
or maybe they have some. I mean, depending on exactly where, but maybe some of them experience boredom and do some things just out of pure creativity and boredom.
Sure.
I think that's probably the case.
I think one of the fundamentals of being elusive and surviving is always being in control of the situation. But that certainly doesn't mean that you can't be curious and still feel like you're in control. If I see two humans walking down the trail yabbing away and they don't know I'm at where I'm at, I may not be elusive and move back into the woods. I may sit there and watch them out of curiosity. Yeah. And as they get closer, if I get uncomfortable with them and think I don't want them that close, maybe I do make a knock. Maybe I do make a sound, thinking they're going to get uncomfortable and leave. I've seen that happen before. You know, I mean, maybe there
or you have a good escape plan, right?
Somebody's
Maybe
around a campfire
yeah.
in the dark and they're playing a harmonica, or there's just 8 people talking.
That's what you brought up to, I think, going back to a point you made earlier, Jeff, about them getting kind of caught with their pants down, so to speak.
Yeah.
I would think with like the height and intelligence that they do have, that outside of other animals, that these things can get bored because they have a higher intelligence. Well,
I can tell you the only times that a bear seems to get caught with its pants down is when I'm coming down a trail, whether I'm on horseback or foot, whether I'm alone or with a client. If it's foraging in an area, if it's in the midst of a berry patch and it's really focused on feeding, and maybe its peripheral isn't as wide open as it is when it's traveling, I may end up in its peripheral and it didn't realize I was there until all of a sudden here I am, right?
Well, that's kind of
or I walk up and we've got its young, a cub on one side of a trail and it was on another, and now it can't just elude into the wilderness. Its parental instinct is to take a stance against me, you know? And so I think those things kind of happen when we interject ourselves with wherever they're at. Most of the time they can just leave if they want. Sometimes they can't. And that's when their pants are caught down, I think, is when they can't. Yeah. They don't get to choose to leave because my little ones are there.
Right, but I'm still going to say, even given all those conditions you just laid out, that in of itself is extremely rare.
It's not rare with bear. I've been within
bears
100
are easy
feet
to
of
entice.
bears. Yes. I've been within 100 feet of bears probably 60, 65 times in my life. And I would tell you there's a half a dozen to maybe close to 10 times where I was scared because there was an issue where there's a cub around, and it's it's how it's going to react to me is not predictable at that point. What I've
It-
been taught to do in their presence isn't
Yeah.
guaranteed to work
Well,
at that point.
the problem, I mean, the problem with the whole black bear thing is that they're so incredibly interested in our food sometimes,
Yeah. And
that they're very easy to entice. The last time I saw a black bear, which was like a couple of months ago, I shit you not, I'm riding through a state park, and it was just hanging around the picnic tables. There was no people there, and I'm like, that's not a fucking coincidence.
no,
But that
Yeah.
isn't the area that I typically have an encounter with one.
That's a habituated bear.
I'm always carrying a firearm.
Yeah.
I'm always in a very remote area. And when I encounter one, there is a higher chance it could be with a young one because it probably wouldn't bring its young ones to the garbage dumpster behind your house, you know?
Yeah, it's
So
just,
it's different circumstances. I'm just telling you, when we compare that to Sasquatch and say catching it with its pants down, where maybe you're walking down a remote area and all of a sudden it sees you and you see it, and it didn't have that wherewithal to know you were there before you knew it was there, and it can't just walk away because its young is on the other side of you from where it is or whatever.
yeah.
I don't think those things are. I think having a Sasquatch encounter is rare, but in the encounters that are truly happening, those interjections of situations like that, I don't think necessarily are rare.
no. And that's been my like focus of research when I go on the field, because people do a lot of textbook research doing wood knocks and stuff like this, but like if we're giving these creatures the benefit of the doubt of how intelligent they are, I'm wanting to play on that. And so what should you do in the woods that you normally don't do? People play guitar all the time, people play harmonica, you chat around the fire, but what you don't do is you don't do laser shows and watch movies on a screen in the woods. And that's been just my approach, is being very unorthodox, thinking outside the box. Because if these are curious creatures and they do get bored, something like that is going to be entertaining to them and drive them in. And you want to play on their curiosity. Because, like
Brent
you
does
said,
the same thing with his light. He strings up lights out there in the darkness, and
Now see,
to bring them to us, because we will never find them out there.
So I have an issue with that. Bring them in from where? Where are you bringing them in from? You're in the woods.
I mean, to be honest, I don't know where you're going to bring them in from. I mean,
Like a mile away? How?
so here's what I was thinking.
Like,
'Cause I'm having this idea that I'm going to be doing in Bluff Creek. We're going to be doing call blasting to hopefully carry out sound further in some of these open canyons. So the idea of that is sound, to get that sound out there for maybe something to hear. And then
so
that's
through wide open air, basically. is what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah. And then hopefully if they get closer to where the sound was, we're going to put kind of like glow sticks in the areas where we were doing call blasting, leading closer to our camp, and then just doing our camp thing inside.
Right. Well, even in that scenario, you'd be lucky to get the attention. I'm uncomfortable saying a mile. I would have to see the exact geography.
It's all a needle in a
Yeah.
haystack.
It's
It's all by
Yeah.
you just have to do it.
Here's the thing. Are we looking for a cool story to tell around the campfire in the future, or are we trying to get answers to this mystery that we can solve this puzzle?
Trying to
Because
get
I'm just going to say this. We can go out in the wilderness and bang on a tree like it's been done 8 million times before and get one to bang back, and we can sit around tomorrow at breakfast and talk about how freaking cool it was, but we didn't prove shit. And call blasting over an open area and getting one to vocalize back, you haven't proven anything.
That's just been research from day one, like since the first researchers started looking into Bigfoot.
And because since they've been doing it for
Roger
60
and
years,
Bob
since
weren't banging
Patterson
on trees.
Gimlin,
Yeah.
and we haven't gotten anywhere, that's why my research, I'm not going to go out and do the stuff that doesn't work.
Roger and Bob
It
were
just doesn't make sense. Roger and Bob
they weren't doing
had
any
the
of that
perfect
stuff.
storm, okay?
Yeah.
They
They were
might
just
have went
riding
out-
around on horseback. Yeah.
They may have went out with the camera hoping they'd find one, but I don't think they calculated when we're on horses and the wind's blowing in this direction that we will have a cover scent where we might not be able to be detected. And if we aren't just walking and we're on horses, when I'm on a horse with my client, we don't talk that much. It's hard to have a conversation when we're on horses walking through the wilderness.
will have to.
If we're on foot next to each other, we're talking nonstop, right? They didn't realize how masked they were making themselves simply being on horseback. I don't think they did.
Riding on a sandbar, not rocks, because that flood wiped out a lot of stuff, which was sand. If you go down there today, rocks. But back then it was sand, and if you're downwind, she's not going to smell you. And then it goes kind of back to kind of being distracted. She was drinking from the creek, from what they remember.
Mm-hmm. So her peripheral shrunk for a moment.
Yep. And
Right.
They caught her off guard, and so they were downwind. They were virtually silent, and she was drinking water. So not only could she not see them, but she probably couldn't hear them too.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know,
my point
is
that they weren't banging
storm.
on trees. They weren't banging on trees or making whoops or call blasts. They were just riding around on horseback looking for really tracks.
And the area was cleared out. They could see from a long distance just because there had been a flood that cleared everything out.
Yeah.
You know.
I think when it comes down to the day, research, I mean, who knows what's right and what's wrong? We haven't proven these things are real yet.
We have 60 years of data to show what's wrong. That's
I mean, we have things that we know that have worked in the past, and people continue to do it. But like, there's nothing wrong with innovating to try.
No, I think the innovation has to be used to where we're trying to capture some form of data in the process. Meaning, if I have a big, huge lowland area, and on the other side of it is another high ridgeline like the one I'm on, okay? And those ridgelines run parallel to each other. I would spend one day on the far ridgeline setting up camera traps, and I would position a couple people over there the next night. And then when I get on the opposite ridgeline and I'm going to call blast down there, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to come down that ridgeline with 4 people at 150-yard intervals, and each one of us are going to run a dog with us.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that call blast to either they're going to hear that and say, I don't want anything to do with that, I'm going the other way. And when they do, we're set up to try to get data on them as they're moving out of an area. Just call blasting and saying, hey, let's see if they come close. It's done 1,000 times, didn't work.
Well,
there has to be a new approach to the way we're doing these things.
After this live, I'll tell you my idea that I'm going to be doing that we're going to hopefully gather data because of it, if it works.
Yeah.
It's always a long shot, but I'll tell you after the live.
I would tell you, if you're doing anything that typically hasn't been done before, you're moving in the right direction.
I agree with that.
If it's been done before, I don't think it has, and it's been an idea I've been wanting to try for several years now.
Yeah.
I've just been thinking about it, how to do it, what the best way is, and now I have the perfect spot to attempt to do it. And I think it's gonna, whether it works or not, I really don't know, because I go out there all the time, and we try different things. Some things work, some
you'll find out.
Yeah, again, I mean, innovating is great. Yeah, okay, but you can innovate all you want and not get anything for 5-10 years of doing innovative stuff. So it doesn't really matter if you're innovative or not. If you're just, it's
already been invented.
Yeah, kind of go away from.
Bigfooters don't have to innovate anything.
Well, I don't know how many times I've looked at people talking about their research, and when I hear them share what they did, I'm like, why didn't you add this element to that? I'm not saying they're on the wrong process. I'm like, why didn't you add this element to that? When people say, hey, I put stuff out there, and when I went back, it was moved. Did you put it in a paper bag and see if there's DNA left on it? Oh, didn't think about that. Dude, if you think you had it moved by something that touched it that was bipedal and non-human, and you didn't collect that up I'm not knocking people's approach. I'm knocking, in a lot of cases, the added step they're simply not doing in a lot of times.
So the group of the guys that we all really play on each other, and we'll do this, and then we'll go out and look at different trees, things we heard like in this area,
Mm-hmm.
and we pulled hairs and stuff. And then a couple of years ago, a guy in our group pulled a hair, and it had the characteristics that you would look for in a Squatch hair. I don't know if that doesn't really mean anything because you can't.
Yeah.
Well,
How do you know
it
that?
uses the
What's
process of
compared to what's
elimination.
there? Like,
If it doesn't have a medulla core, it's probably not a bear. It's probably not a human.
And it was
I
a
mean,
bunch tapered in.
yeah. So Nikki's gonna hurt us on. I think.
But
I'm
that's-
moving us along the road here, but
Yes.
I lost my train of thought
it's okay.
because of the
You'll get it.
Um,
You'll get it. You'll get it.
so
Yeah, right there.
significant number of Bigfoot sightings are likely cases of mistaken identity, right?
I like
And
the idea I've been working on with misidentifications. Sorry, I'll let you finish, Nikki.
no, I that was pretty much it. You know, people can get confused, and especially people who are not used to recall, or they're either younger or older, and it can't. I know I tend to be able to look at things and try to recall exactly what I've seen, but not everybody's built that way. You know, they will just see a big black blob out there, and that's a Bigfoot. And I think and when you put it into a encounter story or into a report, it's just, it's all about the person doing the interview, and if they can establish the credibility of that report.
That's my approach, because I did a documentary and I touched on it for like a 4-minute segment in one of my videos. But so I personally, and this is not like misidentification of like a stump or a bear or something, but I have had issues with sleep paralysis in the past. And I know my aunt has had it, and I know other people. And depending on who you talk to, some will hallucinate and some won't. And so I'm wondering, because there's been stories I've heard of people being like, oh, I've been camping in this really weird spot, and I woke up all of a sudden, and I couldn't move. And I was seeing the shadow figure thing. I'm thinking, okay, what are the causes? What causes sleep paralysis? For one, sleeping on your back is a trigger. Like if you're sleeping on your back, that will help, induce sleep paralysis. But there's other factors in there. Irregular sleep, which a lot of time Bigfoot researchers are often doing because they're up at odd hours of the night for long periods of time. Also, psychological stress. It's stressful out there in the field sometimes. And you're adding all these different things on top of it. And if you're already prone to it and you get sleep paralysis and you hallucinate and see something, then you're going to connect the two. Like, I was in Bigfoot country and then this happened. I think it was a Bigfoot. When in reality, maybe it was a common mistake of sleep paralysis. So I've been really kind of going down that road to see if there's a correlation. And I've talked to a few people that kind of have the same hypothesis as I do. So that's something I'm kind of tracking down.
Yeah.
There's a classic book about that subject, the sleep paralysis, and its interaction with folklore. It's reinforcement of folkloric traditions. It's called The Terror That Comes in the Night.
So I'm not that far off then, right?
Oh, no. It's a fruitful ground
sure.
for
I've had it.
Supernatural possibilities. Yeah, I've experienced it also.
I've experienced
recently.
long time since I've experienced that.
Well,
But again, what we're talking about here is why things aren't Bigfoot, as opposed to why we can't find them. Of course, people misidentify, and that's its own kind of real category.
The bear that's walking upright because its forepaw is injured.
Yeah,
sure.
But that's not why we can't find Bigfoot. It's just kind of pointing out why people.
It's why people don't take it. Why people might not take it seriously.
Bigfoot. Why Bigfoot's not involved? It's a people thing. It ain't Bigfoot at all. It's a people thing.
And this is the worst one. This new topic is the worst one, I think.
Yeah.
I love this. This is my favorite. Let's go. Let's get into this, guys.
Come on, hoaxes. I
called
mean,
it.
they plague the Bigfoot research for decades, right? I mean, it's happened all the way back. I mean, look at those feet over there. You know, the
Well, as
Blo-
people would tease me, my uncle Bob Hieronymus claimed to wear the costume. And
Right. Yeah. Right.
again, no relation. It's spelled differently, but it's always.
Yes.
and I on
How
purpose did not.
How
Bob Hieronymus.
unfortunate! How unfortunate for you as a Bigfoot dude. Jeez, that sucks.
It's a double-edged sword because it served me well, but it hasn't.
Right. I get
I'm
it.
gonna, you know what, I'll just say this now. I'm going to turn the family name around.
hmm
Of all the ones on the screen, that it's that oh man, now I'm blanking out on his name again.
The top
Outstanding.
No,
left.
the one in the center, not the face
Biscardi?
mask, but the other one. Not
Biscardi?
Biscardi,
Mark
but above
Anders?
him. Mark Anders. Yes, Mark Anders, I think, is
Oh,
the most dangerous hoaxer out there.
I'm feeling Gardy is now the dangerous hoaxer out there too.
Biscardi, Dyer, Anders, Sonny Vader is been
Oh
on
yeah,
the
he's
ramp.
he's
Big
getting
ass.
he's getting a lot of play on the vertical format lately. He's
Yeah,
big in the
for
vertical
sure.
format.
Ray
Um,
Wallace, man, talk about bad luck there in Bluff Creek.
Yeah.
Jen, I can't remember what they call that. The Muppet in the middle. I can't remember.
Oh, it's like a
Oh,
It's goofy
it
looking.
is old.
Yeah.
shamanic. It's a shamanic thing.
Is that what you saw, Jeff? That thing in the middle?
No.
Yeah, again,
Um,
so hoaxes, yeah, I mean, I guess hoaxes can be detrimental in some way to actually finding Bigfoot, because I guess it makes people weary of like presenting their evidence or whatever.
I don't
because there's
think
so many
it's
people
very-
hoaxing, right?
I don't think it's detrimental to people in their journey that are similar to where we are in our journey.
Right,
The
but if
most
you're-
damage is done to the people who are in the beginning of their journeys.
Yeah.
Of course, absolutely.
They're
Yeah.
hearing this stuff. And for people who are where we're at, like you just brought up, it actually redefines and probably helps us
Yeah,
plan out what we would do with our data if we had data that was worth presenting, how we go about it and how we do that, how we vet it,
Transparency.
how we validate it,
Yeah.
versus just throwing it on social media and be thrown in the Rick Dyer fire. You know,
Well,
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
want to be there.
Yeah.
they tell us about their story and we don't believe them. You know, like
Right.
I told my story and you don't believe me. Oh, I'm pissed off at you now. What the hell?
You know,
Right.
something I was going to include in the hoaxes part was also the rise of AI. Okay,
Oh,
which is
yeah,
also
Yeah. Mhm.
talked about that.
to,
You, me, and Brent talked about that, Nikki, for a good 2 hours a couple weeks ago, and I don't want to.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say the name on here, but his name rhymes with Bod Hardwood.
Hmm.
you can say it.
Oh wait,
Todd? You're talking about Todd Gatewood, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You can
Heck.
say it on here.
I
The
just-
show's not about him, so it's okay. And
didn't-
you know what? I didn't ever get a copyright over there, so we're
hey,
good. We did it the right way.
we did our due diligence. We knew who we were going up against.
Right.
yeah, we knew. We were very diligent about how we handled that show. So we're always going to have to deal with it, and it for some of us who this is what, like, you know, checking and researching and going through all these photos, especially armchair researchers, which is what I consider myself. It does. It affects us and, you know, beliefs and going and checking these things out, because it's like I have become a skeptic to the evidence. Not that Bigfoot exists. I think Bigfoot exists, but I have a hard time seeing anybody's stuff and saying, okay, that's Bigfoot.
That's
You know,
like, you know what? Like, I'm not at the point where I'm getting like pictures or video or audio from people. But anytime I hear about things, especially on like Facebook or YouTube, I'm like, I'm gonna call it and say it's fake until I hear otherwise. Because
Right. Yeah.
9 out of 10, there is nothing out there. So just
Yeah, it's all very eye rolling.
yeah.
And some might call that jaded. I don't think so. I think it's judgment based on observation, years worth of observation.
Yeah, for sure. And
Yeah.
I just say like, hey, if I don't believe it, I'm not gonna believe it. I've been doing this thing now where I just like, if someone tells me, I'm just be like, I don't think so. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it and give them the benefit of the doubt to keep them going out and getting their mind lost and finding nothing. If that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Mind lost. That's the most important 2 words you just used. Mind lost.
For real.
next on the list. We've got insufficient resources and gear for research. Got 2 pictures there, one from Sasquatch Wizard and one from Trackway. Trackway has a crap ton of gear. Okay, that's just one little picture. Will it ever be enough? And I did that show. Is it too much or not enough? Maybe
That's a tough one.
Yeah, I think it can lean either way.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
I say yes and no. But I have my own special take on, what kind of gear should be used to get a filmed. What really only you could do is get a filmed observation of Sasquatch. The only thing after that is is killing one, and the only gear for that is a Barrett 50 cal.
I think it could be like that
shotgun.
The treatments for AIDS have been satirized as money is the cure for AIDS. And it could be the same thing with Sasquatch. I mean, money could be a limiting factor in discovery.
It's just using the right technology. Yeah.
The thing that we have to remember is a long time ago, they went to the moon with less computer power than what I have in my phone.
Yep.
And what my phone can do video-wise is 1,000 times advanced of the equipment that Patterson-Gimlin had.
100%.
We aren't talking about the technology in order to be able to get to where we need to be. It's the approach. It's the narrative that's poisoning everybody. It's the idea of this is what works and this isn't what works. It's people in this field who say they're trying to solve the mystery, but they present all their ideas and opinions as facts. This is what's ruining these efforts of others because they're being influenced by tainted knowledge, so to speak.
Entertainment.
Yeah.
Always brought in the form of entertainment every single time.
And what's crazy is I was in South Florida with a buddy of mine at RPG just like a couple months ago. And we kind of determined it's not the equipment that you're using so much as it is the person that's using the equipment.
And that's where money would make even a bigger difference, I think, than buying equipment is having dedicated observers who are, who are going to be there even when they don't want to be.
Half of this country, there's 150 million people who own a fishing rod, and not all of them catch fish.
I just don't think they have the patience to catch fish. Because in this day and age, people they watch TikTok videos. That's like, 30 seconds?
No one goes decades without catching a fish and trying. Yeah. No, that's not a thing. So you can catch a fish, and you can catch an undiscovered primate. Our species can do it. The problem is there's only a couple of hundred people trying. And
when I say the problem in 60 years since Patterson-Gimlin isn't that the Bigfoot community hasn't proven anything better yet, brought better proof, considering the advancement in technology and drones and cameras and audio recording and all that, right? The problem is that outside of the Bigfoot community, The number of people in science, in the outdoors, and in the hunting and remote communities that
Millions
are
of
out
people.
there with technology that they haven't accidentally brought something better than PG is a bigger problem for
And
me
we're talking
than
millions
that
of
our
people.
community hasn't
Yeah.
done it. Because
Jeff
that's where it should have
when Jeff
happened by
says
now.
that he is,
That's where it
when
should
Jeff
have
says
happened.
that he's
Out of the
talking
40 guides that I network
millions
with
and
that
millions of
collectively
people.
have 200 and some thousand hours through a spotting scope, and we don't have one recorded yet doing that, that's a problem.
Could it be that they just don't want to information that they got out in the field, just out of fear of ridicule and professional career suicide? I guess.
Well, that might be why they wouldn't go on ESPN and say they got it, but that isn't why they haven't said it to me or other guides. I can go up to guides and have conversations and say, have you ever had anything happen out there that you couldn't find a natural explanation for? And this is like a brotherhood, man. If you would have
Yeah.
experienced that, you would. Most of the guides I network with know about what happened to me
Yeah,
at
they would
18
talk
years
about
old
it.
in Manitoba. They know what happened to me. And I'm telling you, they're out there and they are not seeing it.
No,
Yeah.
I agree.
And you
And they
look
would
at the
talk about
number of, we talked about this, the DNR programs in Montana and Wyoming that are airily flying either planes or drones doing counts on wolves and bison and elk herds. And we're talking thousands of hours of reconnaissance ran in these areas.
Or
They're not
potential
accidentally
pot
catching a Bigfoot. Nowhere.
It makes me wonder,
Yeah.
like how. Okay, again, going back to intelligence, you're talking about something that wants to remain hidden, right? Then you were like, you add up the thing of missing people who go missing like all the time in the woods, and they want to be found. They're trying. So I wonder, like, I guess what I'm trying to get at is the population of these creatures. There's not that many of them, so since there's not that many of them throughout the United States, and they're wanting to remain hid, do you think that's going to make it harder for them to be found?
If
Yes,
you ask me to
absolutely,
give you
it
the
should.
hardcore,
Yeah.
my hardcore hypothesis on what explains it, Tate, it's not going to be easy to hear for a lot of people here, and that's that their numbers are on the decline, and the only areas that they really exist in numbers are remote enough areas that they can exist in numbers, because when it comes to the amount of reports that are coming in and the technology that's out there
Exactly.
and the efforts that are in the field, the narrative doesn't match the encounter numbers and the what's there for data. It doesn't.
Ding, ding,
So two
ding.
things are happening here. Either they aren't there in the numbers that maybe they were 60 to 100 years ago, or a very high percentage of these encounters that are coming in are complete bullshit, fabricated, made up for attention, trying to fit into the cool group kids.
I think the data is skewed as far as
Bingo.
how many reports there are coming. I don't think there are. And to answer Tristan's question real quickly, to be honest, Tristan, Florida, wherever they're at, it's hard to know where they're going to sleep, you know? My best guess is about anywhere a bear or mountain lion or deer would sleep. If you're going off what the Olympic Project has discovered, then maybe they do build nests. But again, that's one region out of the United States. So I don't really know. I can't really say for sure. I'm not going to say for sure if they build nests or not or whatever they do. I think they just sleep wherever's comfortable.
Right. I mean, well, they would have to sleep on the ground, basically. I mean, I don't know. I don't see a 800-pound, 8-foot-tall thing sleeping in a tree.
Sleeping on a branch in a tree.
Yeah, they would.
Are you saying they can't suspend in the air or turn into an orb and float?
Well, maybe they're
at
magical
night?
beings, and that brings up the second explanation. You know, why the title of the show, right? Why can't we find Bigfoot? Maybe they are actually above us, like in some mysterious way that we simply don't understand, that's unknown and unexplained.
What? Okay. why everybody's here? What is everybody like? Flesh and blood. So I'll go first. I'm a flesh and blood believer. I want to hear everybody else's thoughts.
I'm
Flesh
only
and blood.
interested in the truth. I have no vested interest in what I want Bigfoot to be. I have no emotional attachment to what
Based
I want Bigfoot to be.
Based on anything you've discovered or found in your research over the years, what would you have to lean towards if you had a gun to your head and you had to pick one? What would you lean towards?
Undiscovered primate, but that's just a
But
starting
by-
point. Yeah. Mhm.
But natural, like a natural, no, like physical animal.
Well, that's what an undiscovered primate would be. Yeah.
Yeah,
An undiscovered
okay, so
primate would be natural. Yeah. I mean,
Okay,
that's
sorry. It's
yeah. I mean, yeah. So I don't know. I don't even know how to quantify unnatural other than unexplained. So
Okay.
Bigfoot's either unexplained and something we'll never
UFO.
understand, or it's a primate. Yeah. Mhm.
all right, Jeff.
You want to go
How about you,
first, Kevin?
Well, yeah, I pretty much agree with what you guys were just saying about the
Let's move on to
undiscovered
this one.
primate idea, the flesh and blood primate. That's what makes the most sense to me.
I
and I
think
think a lot
that's-
of the, I think it's like if you want to talk about the woo and supernatural stuff, I think a lot of that could be anchored in a flesh and blood being. That would make more sense to me than.
Yeah, but
some-
how do you square that circle?
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm not claiming to be able to do that.
I mean, so I'll say this. I'm going to be a humanist for a minute. Human beings are the most amazing thing on this planet by far.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
gods.
Easy.
We are gods compared to every other living thing on this planet that we know of. We are absolute total gods. And
like that.
well, we are. I mean, I get you can snicker at that all you want, but
Well, because there's so
it's
many of
true.
us, and
I'm agreeing with
extraordinary abilities might be rare among us, but there's so many people out there that there's so many cases of extraordinary people that we know about because they become recognized. And so, yeah, the human possibilities are amazing because there's so many of us and because there are so many exceptional people out there.
So when it comes to
as a
research
species.
and the application of the scientific method, you can't properly start off applying the scientific method to a perspective that you simply don't know what the parameters are, which is when you start involving a paranormal perspective or something like that. What I'm looking at is I have to start with the scientific method from a flesh and blood approach. And I will follow the data wherever it leads me. If it leads me away from a flesh and blood approach, I'll follow it there. I haven't seen data that does that. Everything I've encountered has other than standing in front of one when I was 18, everything since then, the sounds I've heard, the different, everything experience I've had that didn't seem natural on the surface, I can come up with a plausible explanation that may not be likely, but is possible that it's not Sasquatch. Because of that, I don't have evidence that proves they exist in my mind. If I can come up with a situation and say, can I come up with 5 explanations to what explains what I just experienced? And I come up with 5 of them. And I take the 2 that are really out in the weeds and say, let's get rid of them for now, right? We're not going to throw them away, but let's set them aside. And let's look at the other 3. The other 3, I have to look at what's the most plausible. And if one of those is simply saying, you know what, a human could have done that. I don't think there's a human there, but a human would explain that, or this would explain it. If there's a plausible explanation, I can't scientifically attribute it to being a source of Bigfoot. And I haven't ran into something where I can't find a plausible explanation. and here's the biggest problem is people who are out there researching and trying to collect this type of data. It seems to me that their life reference of experience is their threshold that they compare everything they experience now today to their past, right? And most of them don't have an expansive threshold of experience to properly compare that to. And I didn't realize, and I've used this example before, but when I was in the military stationed in Fort Benning, Georgia, working at the Ranger camp, when I seen a guy with the 1st of the 7th of the 75th Ranger Battalion move through the trees in the wilderness, who'd been doing it for a year or two, it was impressive. But I couldn't lose him. But when I see a 14-year veteran move to point A to point B, and the way he moves and the way he doesn't make noise, I'm just like, holy shit, dude, this isn't real life I'm watching right now, right?
Right. Yeah.
Because I don't understand in 14 years how much time he spent getting that good at it. I can't wrap my head around that. And for a creature that may be 3 or 4 decades old and has spent every night of that in that wilderness, you might not understand how good it got at something too. It simply escapes us.
Mountain lion thing. How many mountain lions are experts at being elusive? And you never would ever know that they're there.
Yeah.
Right.
Show me what you got.
That was a great discussion there. Thank you very much. But we got more.
What you got? Jim, you heard them said, show me what you got.
Just in closing, I was going to say Bigfoot's elusiveness remains one of its most compelling mysteries. You know, I think we're going to keep the debate alive, all of us, forever, probably. So
Yeah.
it was a great conversation. Thank you, everybody in the chat, for your questions. And what do I got? This was going around Facebook there of this photo.
I saw that somewhere. Yeah.
Did you see that? This
Yeah.
Boise Bigfoot group, oh my God, they are like not putting out great stuff. They are just eating the fire of crap out there. To me, it looks like there might be a beaver back there because of the size. If you look at the
Yeah,
original,
it's tiny. Yeah.
it's tiny. It's not a baby Bigfoot. The
And
head shape even looks like
It looks beaverish. Yeah.
Beaver hardly know her.
And I don't say that. Yeah. I don't say those kinds of things that often.
But
yeah.
That reminds me of the Larry the Cable Guy episode with these where they're butchering a moose in Alaska,
Oh God.
and there appears to be a Sasquatch watching from the distant background, and he
so
moves.
who always get these photos?
Well, they're
you should
showing
check-
you what they got. I see that came from
Yeah,
Tommy.
showed us
Yeah.
what they got. This is the next one that came out. No backstories. Okay, this doesn't have any backstory on it.
Oh,
The
it's
photo
cute.
on the left is the one that was posted, and the one on the right is what I blew up of people saying.
It looks like an ogre.
I left.
Yeah.
I left a comment saying, "Well, where's the photo before and the photo after?" Because it did turn out to be a trail cam photo. So there's got to be more to the story, right? But people don't.
It looks
want
like a
to
cute
wanna-
little 2 foot tall ogre. Hey, buddy.
It did,
what's
right?
up?
I
Yeah.
think that does look like a troll or something there.
And it's
does.
at
It looks-
it's at almost 6 p.m., which is about an hour and a half before sunset in these areas, to where well, actually at that time of year it was probably about 2 hours before
Yeah, there's
sunset.
kind of there's
But
long
it's
shadows.
it's
but
when there's shadows all
Yeah.
over in these wooded areas like this. I mean,
to me, it looks like a
nothing's
Halloween
well
mask.
lit.
It looks like a
Yeah.
Halloween mask, and it's in the
It's
direct
stuck out
sun. Yeah. I mean that just looks
like
like
a
a
big old
Halloween
dog.
mask. Yeah.
Look at that thing. It looks ridiculous.
That-
I know.
100%
Well,
Halloween
it
mask.
made sure what you got because I
Yeah.
was laughing. I was like, "Oh my god!"
Well, they
Yeah,
showed
that
you.
was scary.
That
Little
that,
troll.
that's what I describe as a knee slapper hoax.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Slap my
Pretty much.
Uh,
Now this is a different story here. This photo has been going around for years, but I never knew its source, and I thought it would be a good opportunity for me to try to do a deep dive on this. I didn't call Steve. I would normally call Steve Calls and see what he had on it, or somebody else to see if where this photo came back. But I wanted to use this to try to show people how you should investigate photos. I'm a big person for screenshotting and dropping pictures into Google
Yeah,
images and see where it
Yes.
takes you, because you never know where it's going to
Can
take
you
you.
enlarge the picture for me? I'm on my phone, so like screen's
Yeah.
like about
You might have to zoom in.
can't 'cause
You might have to
it's
zoom
slide.
in on your
I'm
phone,
not
dude.
on the
Yeah.
chair, I'm on the slide. So that's what I did.
You're
The
right.
minute I dropped a photo into Google Images, I had a dozen hits on it.
Yep.
Okay.
Why are they all
And
from?
but what I do is I go down to the bottom of the list. I don't start at the top. You start at the
Right.
bottom, which is how they put it by.
Chronologically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I did that, it came up with a
Asian.
2014 hit. So I knew it had to be before 2014 that this happened. And from there, I worked my way up, hitting those links. Well, and some of them scary because you don't know what links you're going to.
Yeah.
But the process, because as you can see, there's some Chinese links in there.
Some Asian
And-
writing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I went and I hit that cryptozoology, which I knew was French, and that took me to another one, which showed these two photos here, which
Right.
in turn, up at the top, it says Bigfoot in Price, Utah. So now it gave me a location. So keep that in mind. And I went and I
Wow.
ended up finding an article or a photo of where it was in a newspaper. But when I zoomed in and blew up so I could read what was at the bottom, it came up with the name of, oops, I put that in the wrong way. Daryl Smith. Okay. Who was a researcher in Utah. And it turns out that was his creation that he used as a
Right.
promotional creature for their conferences in Utah for many years.
Yeah.
So I wonder if like you can. I wonder because obviously he wasn't doing a hoax, right? From what I'm getting.
No.
Well,
No,
no,
it
he
wasn't.
died. He died 2 years before this photo
Yeah.
is even documented as being online.
But I
So-
wonder if like, people take a photo from a promotional thing and claim it was a hoax, and then thereby ruining somebody's reputation off the basis of nothing.
Exactly.
Sure.
And as I'm looking through this website on the Utah Bigfoot Files, there's Price Canyon is listed on one of their things. So that's how Price Utah or Price Canyon got involved in my search. But that is, it just takes you some time. Now, as I'm going up that link, I also seen all of a sudden there's RMSO. So I hit the link to Rocky Mountain, and he did have the same stuff there.
Yeah.
Of
course.
Yeah,
obviously did the same thing I did.
it's like with the whole Roger who has the rights to the Patterson Gimlin film. There's Bob Gimlin and Patricia Patterson, which you proved by just going and doing a search. I'm like, I feel like an idiot sometimes. Like, how confident am I in this conversation?
You just gotta, try to follow up. I didn't know if I was going to be able to find the copyright for
I mean,
the
I
PNG.
feel Fine when he was like,
It took
"Oh,
me a little
hey,
while.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's a very famous film. The PG film is
Right.
it's up there with the Zapruder. So.
Well, it's like it's
Sorry,
funny.
Tada.
No, I'll tell you. It's funny.
Bigfoot in the news with Nikki.
It's funny. I texted Nikki like the other day. I was like, Todd Gatewood made this post about claiming or going back on what he's been saying for over the past 7 months. And part of it was like saying, "Oh, they don't have the Maccabees don't have the original film. It wasn't the film out of the camera. There's no baby." I'm like, he just said something we all knew forever.
Yeah, he obviously he
Obvious.
saw our show and was trying to clarify a few things. So it's okay. It's all good. So anyway, in the news, I've got this article here that I found, and I immediately, what do? I talked to Kevin. I sent Kevin a message. And I said, Kevin, what is all this about? Is this worth doing a show all on its own? Will you mind, checking this out for me? And of course, Kevin did the deep dive on this and gave me all the big words and everything about what he thought about it. And we decided we're going to have a conversation later about some stuff. But this, I'm just going to throw it into the news. So DNA of Thorin, one of the last Neanderthals, finally sequenced, revealing inbreeding and 50,000 years of genetic isolation. I was curious because of the whole thought of inbreeding and the idea of decrease in population, increasing inbreeding, right? Because we're always talking about big and the population. And why aren't we seeing them? Is the population decreasing? Is that going to create inbreeding?
Oh, 100%. And speaking of South Missouri, I think it's on the rise.
And especially with this population seemed to be like strongly dependent upon this cave, like a location that was key to their survival. So that that would tend to make them more isolated.
Yeah.
It real like
here that
as with
go ahead.
As with inbreeding among humans, like incest, that would genetically make you handicapped, wouldn't it? So wouldn't
yes, it does.
Among Bigfoots in the same family group
Most
provide
likely, yeah.
That's where I was thinking, is this what people are calling dogman? Are people really seeing maybe an inbred Bigfoot?
Ooh, that's yeah. No, you don't get those kinds of traits out of inbreeding. You don't get like Marvel traits.
Yeah,
like,
I think that's I'd agree with that.
Yeah,
you wouldn't say no.
You get
before you would have physical differences surfacing. You would be noticing different if you were to be studying them. You would be noticing differences in ability to communicate, ability to navigate, ability to thought process. All that would be affected before physical changes in their appearance, likely.
Yeah, because that's what I was. It wouldn't
it
be
doesn't. It doesn't take a lot. And we have a lot of.
But wouldn't we just need to show a little bit of
no.
Now,
I can show you. Whoa! I can show you. I can show you. I can show you 2 generations of inbreeding in humanity, where physical traits they're right fucking there in your face, man. There's a lot of D going on,
The only thing reading why good
Whitaker family there in
the Whitakers,
lots from the Goonies like that and kind of reading.
Yeah, like that. But anyway, pretty interesting. I can't remember if I linked this in the description, but I'll do that for you guys later. It says that Neanderthals who were isolated for thousands of years, in spite of the fact that there were other groups in the area. They found different groups, but these ones remained in their own little area. I don't know. I found that interesting because of the whole fact of inbreeding.
Well, they're gone, aren't they?
I feel like if there was inbred Sasquatches, that you'd have more of a chance of getting those on film, just because they're not cognitively as aware as
Right.
one.
Yeah,
What?
You'd think they'd be total like doi, like oh, yeah, you die,
Kaiju made a comment that said David Ellis had found 6-toed footprints at Bumping Lake. I would want to point this out, that in human nature, our reproductive nature, we have a lot of cases where twins have absorbed a twin while in the womb and are
that's freaky.
born with extra digits or part of a hand growing out of their wrist. Crazy
Or a second
shit like
head.
that. Yeah.
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 So I mean, the idea of additional,
Mhm.
you know, whatever, I don't know that would be able to really prove anything.
I agree.
No,
I think
course
that's a good
not.
point that I haven't really thought of. Is like,
Tracks don't prove anything anyway.
yeah, could like inbreeding cause deformities in foot or whatever, or hands? Adding
Well, it's not so much inbreeding. Let's focus on this just for a moment. If you're evolving or devolving, you are talking about dominant and recessive traits. What traits are leaving us? It's likely that humans were able to see in a ultraviolet vision spectrum 800, 900, 2,000 years ago. Who knows? And we've evolved away from it. Because there are other things. If you've got attached earlobes, that's a recessive trait. Humans are moving away from that. I have attached earlobes, and because that's a recessive trait, you know what else I can't do? I can't roll my tongue. That's a recessive trait. If you can roll your tongue, it's a dominant trait.
about
There are a lot of things that we find that we're moving away from.
It's easy.
And if you can understand how dominant and recessive
I can do a
traits
lot of
work
things.
into evolution, so to speak, evolving towards or away from things, you can now see that if Bigfoot's a flesh and blood creature, there are certain things that some of them may be capable of or possess in their physical appearance that others simply vary slightly from because it's a dominant or recessive trait. It isn't necessarily a mutation.
no.
Yeah.
Right.
Bigfoot mutated, man. It's like some kind of X-Men thing.
I don't like mutation, even like in humans. I don't like. You don't see like a person that is missing 4 fingers on his right hand and like 6 toes on his left foot and say that human's mutated. I just say something seriously happened at birth and he got dealt a bad hand.
Well,
Or
and
it's
now you
a
got to factor
lawnmower
in,
accident. I don't know.
and now you've got to factor in the varying differences in appearance in humans worldwide. I've been keying in on this example for a lot of times lately, and
That's
it.
huge.
If you took a group of
But I'm
Aborigines from Central America and you brought Shaquille O'Neal in the camp, and the tallest one of them is 4'9", and here's Shaquille O'Neal, they wouldn't think he's human, dude. They
Right,
wouldn't
right.
see him as a human being.
Yeah, but those,
think-
yeah, but Jeff, those anomalies do happen in Africa. I mean,
They happen in
Mukinde-
nature
Mukinde
all the
Mutu-
time.
like Matumbo was.
You know,
was taller
I
than
get that.
Shaquille.
I get that, Pat.
Yeah.
But you know where they're not happening is when I use examples of the white-tailed deer herd in Alabama, where a 7.5-year-old buck, full maturity, full rack growth, everything, is
Way
40% smaller than
Yeah.
a Kansas or Nebraska or South Dakota white-tailed buck, and the genomic sequence is
Yeah.
identical.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and
I
there
mean, that's
isn't a rare
Urban's
case
rule,
of
yeah.
oh here's a deer down in Alabama that weighed 290 pounds. Nope, they aren't there.
But could that be
They
just
simply aren't.
Yeah, you're right. They're not.
Okay, before I start losing everybody and we can keep talking, but before that, I need to tell everybody before they leave to the next show. I'm going to be on Raw Side Paranormal tomorrow, 5 p.m. She's a small channel, just starting to grow. She asked me on to talk about Bigfoot. really appreciate if you guys could all go over there tomorrow to Ross Side Paranormal. The link's down in the chat, and join me and Enzo with Laura Wilbur, who's the host, and appreciate if you go over there and hit her up with a subscribe. Like I said, she's a new growing channel, and hope to have a lot of fun. So that's tomorrow, 5 p.m. Mountain, and hope you guys are there, and we can continue to talk if you guys want to, but
Yeah, I think we should talk more. Maybe I don't know.
you think you should
Hey,
talk more?
You
Yeah,
guys want to nitpick at my thermal video that I got? You could probably bring up Nick.
Yeah.
I would love to get your guys'
Okay,
opinion.
guys, this is the show's over. The main show is over. Now we're going into extra innings. So
Yeah,
you're welcome to stay. And I know a lot of you are loyal to Squatch DTV. So if you want to head on over to there, his show is just started.
None of this further content will be on the quiz this Friday.
Okay, my audience is here, so
I've already bought my thing of nachos and beer here, so we have to go with the extra.
So now we're going to be talking about other stuff now.
Nick,
So,
if
okay,
you
what
go
are you going to shoot me or
YouTube-
something? What?
You go to YouTube.
oh, free
what-
fall.
Bigfoot
Oh.
exploration.
Hold on.
I
You're
hate it
breaking up
already.
there.
I think it's a fox. I'm prediction, fox.
So I'll give you guys an example. So this was outside of LA a couple hours. Behind
Which is still in LA.
yeah, I mean,
I mean, God,
so we were in.
sorry, I couldn't help myself.
No, you're good. There's a little town called Gorman, California, which is right by Fraser Park, and we were up in the mountains behind Hungry Valley OHV Park.
Yeah,
which-
yeah.
The way to get up there is you have to have a pretty good car because there's a lot of hunting up there.
hmm
And so it was October of 2016. I was with a buddy of mine, and myself. It was my first time brand new with a therm, and something that really struck me as odd was the amount of deer that I saw that day. And then I heard my friend Robert Leiderman interview Bart Catino about his thermal sighting in the Sierras, and something that Bart pointed out was the amount of deer that he saw that day. So that I filmed on was a Flare Scout TK, which is a range.
Which video?
Yeah.
It's SoCal Bigfoot thermal footage.
All right. So you had a FLIR Scout, like
Okay.
lower,
So it's about
whatever.
yards, 300 feet.
Yeah.
And then if you actually the whole thing is like 20 minutes long. I think the video, the documentary.
I was waiting for Nikki to say which one of these Bigfoot thermal videos do you want me to play? Because I was going to be like, okay, wait a minute here.
Nikki, it's. Oh, I guess you can go here. So kind of keep scrolling until you see like a thermal video, if you
Is
can.
that you, Tate?
Yeah, that's me in all my glory.
Yeah, you're a handsome man. I'm just gonna say that right now because I'm not
scroll
afraid to.
Keep scroll further back. Oh, right there, I think in the middle. Yeah, this is kind of me showing the area. Yep. There's the drone footage. So yeah, this is the area. It's on top of a ridge.
That thing's pretty hairy.
There it is. Yep, you had it.
Oh God, it's like 2 seconds long.
Want me to go straight?
It's about a minute long. Yeah, there it is.
Oh, okay.
So the video is not like damning by itself, but my buddy pointed out.
It's wide open out there.
Oh yeah, it's wide open.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's like that kind of ridge behind there. This thing was like sitting down, then it pops vertically up, and I changed it to black hot, and you see it because this is my first time using a thermal. So if anybody's used a thermal for their first time, definitely get it because they're very hard to use. And so that's why I was flipping through the filters to see it. And then
I'm having a flashback right now
No.
Pat knows what I'm going to say. A show that Pat was on commenting on a thermal Bigfoot video, and it started a world war.
Yeah,
But the
World War.
background was similar to this, wasn't it, Pat? about that
black and white
distance
with
to the
trees.
back tree line, and
Yeah. It
So,
started a world war.
So
Yeah.
I saw it with headlamps on. I saw like eye shine.
Oh,
could've-
that's
I could've-
awesome.
So
Sorry.
I
Charge
pointed,
it.
and I was like still looking. I was like,
Sorry.
"Oh, it's still there." And I bring it back up, and my buddy who was with next to me, he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna do a couple of calls." And he did a call, nothing happened. Then he did a more of aggressive call. Then he said it stood up. But here's where I made the mistake. Since this was my first time using the thermal, there it stood up right there. Like
That's
it's
it,
not.
huh?
Yeah,
That's
it's
something.
not. It's not like the best video ever. But under the circumstances of the location, I heard
I
a
didn't
whoop
see
response
anything.
up to it.
where
Sorry,
was
I
this
didn't-
at?
I didn't see anything at all.
I'll have to send you guys a
You
private
didn't
link.
see that? It's
No.
I can
you-
see something dark move, but being able to decipher that from a bear or anything else
I didn't see
that
anything.
would show up black.
That's the tough
in
thing
that.
about the thermal is like all the detail is reduced.
I wish it would
Yes,
have been white
absolutely.
hot.
I got
I'm
I-
looking at something,
Yeah.
Nikki. Because
White hot.
my buddy Jonathan, he did a video and he zoomed in on it where you can see the thing.
oh there yeah, I see something.
I'm gonna find the for it.
Might be a fox.
No, at 300 feet away with a FLIR Scout TK. If that was a fox, that's a huge ass fox.
Yeah, I'm just goofing on you, dude.
I'm looking for
Sorry.
It was a fox man.
Fox,
Now
There it is.
now
there it is.
we got a brand new cryptid.
there it
I
is.
love it. I love it.
fox. Nikki, I sent you a link to the video. He zooms in on the video on that one. If you want to check that out real quick.
Pixels on top of pixels.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got a thermal footage of I left it there running, and I got footage of a black bear and a cub walking through the frame, from one end to the other, and it was really cool. And it was obvious to me that it was a black bear, but I had a hard time convincing my friend that it was a bear and not a deer. But to me, it was obvious from the way it moved.
So that's
But
what my friend was saying. Just like, so my buddy who was with me is a skeptic. He's like, I don't know what I saw, but I can't explain it. But leading up to the video, we were walking down this little trail, and I did a wood knock on this dead tree, and the sound was like really bad. It didn't really carry that far, and we're
Well, it
actually
never
on.
does.
So I down in one direction, and whooped the other direction, and about like a few minutes later, I heard a response back. That's what prompted me to go to this like overlook area that we saw earlier and see what we could see.
Next time, dude, turn on your highest fucking flashlight and charge
Okay.
the damn thing.
That's what I wanted to, but like if I took pictures of the daytime, and if you were where we were standing, there's no way we would have been able to run there at night and catch this thing.
It was pretty far off. You think? Like,
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, 300
Yes.
feet is a long way at night.
Yeah, I mean, it looked a little rugged terrain. I'll
Yeah,
give you
it was-
that. Yeah.
Where it was standing on, it was really.
one of the places I use my thermal most often is there's a huge deer herd there, and I see lots of them. And it's the same place where I saw the bear, but there's also it's in between two dairy farms, and there's cattle everywhere, and it's I've had more than one false alarm where I thought that thing is huge, but it's just a cow.
That's my friend who was with me. His name was
Cows
Austin.
are big, though.
Nikki, yeah, here it is, recorded by Tate Hieronymus. So he does zoom in. Subject here. It's kind of right by that tree in the background, overlooking that on that ridge. So I think he shows the regular footage. Then he shows the zoomed in footage, and he pointed something out to me. It could have been the FLIR itself, kind of making the subject do it, but he does show something like kind of protrude out from its arm or from its side, which I never caught.
Wow, yeah.
So it'll stand up here, and I think he does zoom in on it, and he does like slow it down and everything.
I'm not looking at here.
So you'll see it kind of like almost middle frame on the ridge right there. So I point cameras down because, like I said, first time using the thermal, I can see the eye shine with my headlamp. So I saw it was still there, so I start filming again. I bring it back up.
Ow.
Hell, there's no way that was an owl.
Not the eye shine.
Yeah, I mean, eye shine. Yeah, I mean, for that matter, it could have been anything. For eye shine.
There it is.
Yeah, stands.
I just, oh my gosh, oh my, it's like,
It's something.
It's the way
That's
it's
something.
stood up.
it's
just
uh,
it's not like
Something hot. It's something hot.
okay. He stands and turns because I didn't see it. So like I said, I was relying on my friend's visual because he had a headlamp on. Yeah, it stands up.
Oh,
right
there's the zoom.
yeah,
Hmm.
okay, that's just a black dot of heat signature, like, you know.
whatever. So the reason I don't.
It's alive. Whatever it is, it's alive,
Yeah, that,
which is half the battle.
so even at 300 feet, yeah, that whatever it is small. It's not, that's nothing big at all.
The video, the
It's very
thermal
small.
looks small, but that tree is damn huge. Like you could see me. Like there was actually a tree that fell down during a storm, but I'm kind of standing here in the middle, next to where this thing was at.
Oh, gotcha.
When I look at live things that are in the areas that I'm in when I'm out in the,
Yeah, it
in
could have
the
been
remote stuff,
And here's
I
the,
can tell you there's literally 30 animals
if you go back
up to 3 foot tall that it could have been.
if you go back to that
I
video
agree.
where it had the daytime overlapped with the thermal image.
Oh God, you guys are going. Yeah, this is like super analysis.
So yeah, there's the video, and then you'll see it'll show up here in a second.
God, when I want to say this, like, I see. I guess that's kind of the problem. Even if that's Bigfoot, let's just say that was Bigfoot. Good job, man. Wow.
I mean,
So inconclusive that
it's
there's no overlays that you could ever put together to make
no
the world go.
Well,
Holy shit.
take Bigfoot out of the conversation for a minute. In the areas that I'm in, if you had that filmed and it was a marmot, if it was a fisher, if it was a badger, if it was any of those animals, you wouldn't have been able to conclusively show that that's the animal it was based on that quality of footage right there.
nor the fact would you be able to see it at that distance with that specific thermal
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah, you need to get it to push over a tree or something, man.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
so
make it do that. Make it do that.
That's what I want to get on.
Yeah.
was okay. It was not a human. It was not a human because we saw eye shine from this creature, and
It did not look human at all.
no human at all.
Which is not bode well either for Bigfoot. So,
But
they're kind of human looking.
it wasn't.
You know,
I don't think
That's another reason why it hadn't been discovered yet, because too many people have mistaken it for a person.
I don't think it was a deer. I don't think a deer was going to be wanting to hang around.
it didn't
there.
look like a deer. I mean, to me, it looked like a possum or a porcupine or
That's
something
way,
about that
Or like
size.
Raptors
Yeah.
as a dog.
way too small. Not a dog. Because the thing that gets me, what makes this is like the one thing out of like.
No, it looked about the right size at 300 feet. Of a
I was say I
dog or
don't know.
porcupine.
I'm
Yeah.
failing to connect on your ability to discount based on size something that, if it was to sit straight up, could sit 3 to almost 4 foot tall.
To
Discount that from being what
thing
you
that-
caught there.
the only thing that could be at that height in that area would be a black bear
It's Petey.
and look bulky like that.
It's definitely Petey.
Could be a black bear.
But the problem is, Jonathan pointed out, and I agree with him, a bear's eyesight is only good for 30 yards. Beyond that, they rely on their smell. This was 100 yards. So
That's not to say that it couldn't have sensed that, though.
no, it's not to say that it couldn't, for sure.
Yeah, that's
Part
not
that
far.
gets was when I did a whoop, I heard a whoop back in that general direction where that thing was standing. Now, yes,
Man,
owls
no.
do a whoop sound, but an owl to be that big in 100 yards, there's no way.
Yeah, I don't think what we saw there was an owl. It was on the ground.
But
So,
if it was
yeah.
a bear that could mimic owls and stuff, I don't think it was a bear either.
Yeah, we don't know Bigfoot can mimic owls, man. That's not a thing. That's just something people say.
No, I don't know if they can or not. I'm just saying what
Yeah.
animals civilization that sounds human-esque. Not bears, not dogs, not
Avian.
deer. Other than human, other than
Avian. Yeah.
nah, it wasn't that.
No. Well, then what was it? I mean,
Well, I
no.
can tell by the way Tate is presenting this data that he believes 100% this is Bigfoot, and you're not going to say anything to change his mind.
No,
And
that's
you can
Well,
you can
I don't
deny
think
that right now
I
if
don't
you
think
want
he's saying
to,
that.
to try to appear neutral, but I don't know that that's the case.
I don't think he's trying to say that. So I'm just asking questions. That's all.
I
I'm always
think it
open.
is fair to, when I question the distance that this was, and you admittedly being new to filming with thermal that night, the way that it's captured, what we
Right,
see
right.
here, the data that we have, the idea that this could be a different animal, to come back and say the only thing that could be that tall and that big and that bulky is a black bear, based
Well,
on
I
the
will-
quality and length of video you captured, is pushing the directive towards Bigfoot. It's not
will-
being fair.
I will say this, Jeff. So this was filmed in 2016. I didn't release this till like a couple years ago.
Yeah.
After I've taken several people to the site. I've taken Glenn Brown Dwarf, who's been there. I've taken Jonathan Easley, who's a really well-grounded researcher. I've taken Ron Reed, who's a good friend of mine, who's very level-headed. Because I wanted to get their opinion. I've shown them the
Sure.
video. Everybody is like, I don't know, man. Because you see a video like this, and you don't know. And yes, okay, you could say, oh, I'm covering my ass, or
Well,
Yeah.
no, first, I want to make sure that you understand, Tate.
Hey,
I
Jeff,
am not saying that you're trying to pull one over on somebody. Not at all.
hold on.
Yeah.
Jeff, what
But let me finish this. What I
No,
will
wait.
say is this: from
Jeff.
a research perspective,
Bias.
when I have something that I want people to consider and look at, when I vet this myself, I go at it with the same tenacity to disprove it as I do to prove it.
Right.
And you've brought a lot of people in, it feels like, to validate what you feel it is. But I don't know if you've approached it with the same tenacity to prove that it isn't what you believe that it is.
as in, okay, give me an example real quickly. Just
Well,
What do you think it is?
I would say that
it very
If-
well could be a bear. It very well could be something else.
It
The-
looks. If it's a bear, it looks like a smaller bear. It doesn't look like a full-grown black
And that's
bear to
the
me.
thing. And it comes down to catching these things with their pants down. I don't think it was an adult. I think it was a younger one, because this is in Southern California. It's very dry out there.
if I don't know where in Southern California, and I admittedly I'm not familiar
Southern.
with the
Oh,
vertebrate
yeah, L.A.
the vertebrate mammals that exist there. I will say this, that I've seen through a thermal before. I've watched them all the time when I'm out in these areas that I go to. But a bedded down mule deer standing up with its ass to me and then leaning down and crouching as it walks away wouldn't have appeared much different than what you have right there.
No, it's true.
And it would have been about 4.5, 5 foot tall.
So if you actually go and watch
Yeah.
this video and you zoom in on the thing, you can see like a little bump there standing or sitting down before it actually stands up. And that's the other thing that makes me think it could be something else. Because when we came around the corner, I got about 2 minutes of footage. And before I actually started filming, if you've been to this area, there's lights kind of way off in the background, because way out there is like
Okay, let me again just say what I just said. When I film deer bedded down facing away from me and they stand up, when I see the round ass of that deer and over the top of it, see the crown of its head, from a silhouette standpoint, you'd think you were looking at a human.
Yeah.
I'm just putting it out there. Dude,
No.
But
all I'm saying is
short
I
one,
don't
yeah.
feel
Yep.
you approaching the disproof with the same tenacity. I think there's other explanations to what you have here that I'm not saying prove it isn't right, but are plausible. They're plausible.
Yeah.
And I don't think
but-
you want to accept the plausibility of it.
No, I am, and I'm still wanting to take anybody that I can out there to go see it for themselves. And like I go out there every time I can get to California. I just don't live there since I'm in Florida.
Yeah,
When
no
you say
kid,
see
like,
it for
wow,
themselves,
dude,
do you
yeah.
mean, are you saying you
Jeez.
take them out there to, when you say see it for themselves, to see the area for themselves, or to
No,
hopefully see that
I want
specimen?
I want people to go there with me. I want them to hear my encounter story in the area. I want them to see the area for themselves. I want them to come up with their own conclusion of what they think.
You bring me to the area, that would do nothing.
Yeah,
I mean, what's
I
it
agree.
like?
It wouldn't do anything.
It'd be cool to be there, though.
It'd be cool
Like,
to
it
be
looks
there.
like a cool place,
Don't get
yeah.
me wrong. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
from applying the scientific method, you gain nothing from being in the presence of that area.
Yeah, it's
When we're
too
talking
personal.
about the length of footage, the quality of footage, what you filmed, what you believe it to be, the amount of research you've put in, having other people visit the area, bringing me there wouldn't advance, in my mind, any actual data
I
to
agree.
consider and proof. It
I
wouldn't.
agree.
Well, no,
Hey,
I'm not saying this
yeah.
is going to prove that this is real, or Bigfoot's real or not, or anything like that. What I'm saying is, it could be a real sighting of something
It could be.
that's unexplained
It-
that probably wasn't.
It could be. But when I'm
Which doesn't
simply
move the
playing
ball down
devil's
the field.
advocate and giving you some pretty well illustrated ideas of other things that I could catch on thermal that could be confused as being similar to what you caught. And I'm going to tell you, every time I've looked at through a thermal, a deer from behind, bedded down as it stands up, and I see that broad, looks like shoulders type ass end, and I'm looking at the back of its head from a silhouette wise rise above it, it looks like a head on shoulders.
So there's
And as that animal
a,
turns and crouches, it looks like it's now evading me. I'm just telling you, I've seen it over and over, dude. That's a plausible explanation for what you have here, but I don't think you want to accept that as a plausible explanation.
No, I'm willing to accept it. And there's other things I didn't add to the video, because if I was to add to a documentary everything, because we went back the next day, we looked, we found scuff marks that were strange. We took pictures. I documented it. I'm not going to say they're tracks or anything, because I don't know. I went to where the tree that this thing was standing by, there was like a little evergreen tree, like a pine needle tree, next to that really big one. And since last year, it has grown. It's 6 feet tall now. At the time, it was like 3-4 feet tall. I'm 5'11". And the other thing is too, I did a recreation with the thermal with that guy right there, Austin, and he's about 5'5", 5'6". He's not very tall. So I did do thermal recreation.
Mhm.
We did go over the area. I had him held up LED red lights, and I took a picture of him. I overlaid it during the day. We took pictures of potential scuff marks in the ground. We measured it, the distance from where this thing was to where we were standing. I filmed it with the drone. And where this thing was standing, it was on a steep incline going down into the valley. And where we were at was a parking lot that was like a 5-minute walk. So there's a lot more that I actually did that I did not.
Sure. And I appreciate that. The only thing I'm saying, and this is taking nothing away from you, this is simply saying my threshold of experience, what I've seen through thermals, what I've seen through spotting scopes, what I've been around
Right.
really looking for, and I'm looking for this. Trust me, since I was 18 years old, I don't go in the woods without my peripheral wide open right now. But if I'm applying the scientific method and
story.
looking at the data,
Right.
what I'm looking at you presenting here, even considering the other people have looked at it, their opinions, I couldn't validate that as being likely Bigfoot. I simply couldn't.
No, and I don't like hold that against you for not. And like I said, like I want it to be Bigfoot. You're not wrong there. I really, in my opinion, I do strongly
Ding, ding,
believe
ding.
it
Yeah.
is Bigfoot. But at the same time, somebody who's dead set on saying it's a Bigfoot will not take people there to help prove anything. And that's what I really want to do.
Well, what would be the significance of taking me there? I'm
wanna
very
get-
curious about that. You
I
keep
wanna get-
saying it.
Opinion on it. I want to see what they think. I want to hear their opinion because opinions do matter to me.
Well, do you think Bigfoot's in that area? I mean, be honest.
I
Do you
think
think Bigfoot is in that area?
I don't think they live there. I think they travel through there. It's because I've seen bears there. I've seen mountain lions there, but I don't think it's a
The
spot
hit and miss thing. You know.
I don't think it's a spot they'll stay in and live in full time.
Hey, you're gonna have to show me on Google Maps exactly. You're saying it's 2 hours from what downtown LA is like.
Look up.
So up like north of LA. I'm
Hey, Nick,
guessing.
pull it up
Northwest,
Google Maps.
northeast.
You're breaking up. They.
Are you able to bring up Google Maps by chance?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if you look on Google Maps, you
Or
look up
even
a
just
town,
map.
or yeah, whatever works. There's
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah,
called Gorman, California.
Gorman. So
Yeah,
it's
which is up-
northeast. I'm guessing it's northeast of LA.
Yeah, it's like right next to Fraser Park. Like it's out there. I mean, so you go through Santa Clarita, and it's about like an hour or so drive.
Yeah.
And then,
Hey, dude, I'm not a California like
no, you're
connoisseur, but yeah, been there a couple times.
you're good.
Somewhat familiar. Yeah.
It's a deserty kind of area.
Yeah.
Was it Bigfoot? You know, like I said, I'm not gonna lie and say
Well, I don't see how they can thrive in deserty kind of areas. I don't know.
I don't-
Well,
Oh, yeah.
even when somebody shows me areas of that type of the trees that are behind there, is it more dense than that anywhere? Is it really thickly forested
bottom.
It
It's
looks
not.
area?
weak.
It's
It looks
the bottom,
weak, Jeff, with
but
the trees. Yeah.
I was going to say, with what you have there, if something could run 20 miles an hour, it couldn't get to where it could hide from somebody a half mile away approaching it.
oh,
It
that,
simply couldn't.
Yeah.
Not in those woods.
Yeah, that just seems so unlikely.
It's just not.
That's the last place on Earth I would think an undiscovered primate would thrive, or it would live. Like,
that's
same
why.
thing,
And like again,
yeah.
like for research in general, for me, that's why people overlook those areas, and that's why I think
they're not outsmarting us like that.
they might be spotted.
Well,
there.
I can tell you the only way they would outsmart us like that would be this.
There are no kids.
They
there.
stay buried in the little bit of trees that are there and unseen if the sun is up. And the only way they're stepping out of those areas into the edges of those tree lines is when it's dark. Because there's got to be enough human traffic around. And I mean, even a minimal amount would be enough to make the risk versus reward. I'm not going into the open there.
See, that's
Anything within 2 miles could spot me.
the nice thing. Here's what the thing was. So we weren't down in the valley. The problem
Oh
is,
yeah, there's some heavier areas there.
yeah,
heavier
that's what
forested
that's what the terrain is like. It's a really wooded area, and then but you're also on a ridge with like a 70-foot degree incline on either side. And so for like a deer or bear or even squatch, they can maneuver that terrain so much easier.
So those, when Nikki had that up and it showed what looked like trails on there, are those trails or fire roads or?
They're roads, yeah. They're Jeep trails because the spot we were at, below it is Hungry Valley OHV Park. So people can like take their dirt bikes, but you travel this road and go up into a mountain. And
But when you look at how accessible this is, meaning Saturday afternoon, if somebody's in LA and said, let's take a 2-hour drive and go somewhere, this place can't be void of human traffic. I mean, there's got to be a fair amount of travel, even on these minimal roads.
Oh, it's still a fair amount of travel. You're not gonna some of these roads you're not gonna be able to take your Subaru Impreza or Volkswagen Golf up here. You have to have a lifted car because
That's just where we're now approaching that parameter of necessity to go 60 years and not be found, to where it starts feeling like this doesn't work with the narrative to me. The only way we get 60 years and not have this thing is if it's in the remote areas I'm finding myself in. But areas like this isn't remote. It's forested, it's rural, but there's enough human traffic there. You can't go a decade and not be found. It doesn't fit the narrative. It just doesn't to me. There'd have to be a supernatural aspect to this to avoid the human presence that's in those areas. It's not that remote.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's not remote, but considering at night how many people are going to be out versus during the day. I mean, even
I agree. They just have to be somewhere during that day if they're flesh and blood.
so
I mean,
what-
that comes down to the LBL discussion I
Well,
had with Pat. At night, I can walk from one end of the
Yeah.
LBL to the other, and nobody will detect me. I guarantee you. If I have the cover of darkness, I can get through that area. Probably the same here. But the 12, 14 hours a day that it's not dark, and you start putting humans in areas with ATVs and Jeeps and running fire, this thing would have to nail its ass to a rock surrounded by trees and not move
so that
to
area
not be found.
out is only at the bottom of the hill because, like, I can't remember if you look this up. There was a plane that crashed in that area that was carrying a bunch of stuff, and they still have never found that plane. And that was
Oh, wow.
the Los Padres National Forest where I filmed this video. Because if you go up to the side of the mountain where we're at, there's so much wilderness that if something wanted to hide, it very well could. It's that steep terrain. It's really,
Okay.
it's like the PNW, just not as forested.
So now we start reaching the point where we look at an area like that and say, in order for it to exist there, you can't look at the area as a whole. You have to say, could it habitate or exist in that 10% most elusive, most heavily forested, most off the beaten path area,
see
and
that-
simply pass through other areas as it's looking for
right there-
forage and water and stuff.
The reason I like this area better, the Los Padres National Forest, better than the San Gabriel Mountains, which is San Gabriel Mountains is right behind Los Angeles, San Bernardino, Big Bear Lake, very, very, very populated with people. This area over here, the areas you got, the nearest town, their biggest city is Santa Clarita. The two smallest towns you have are Fraser Park and Gorman. From Gorman, pretty much like north, have that, but you have a bunch of mountains that you can go through. You got Ojai, which is more coastal than it is in the mountains. Then you got Santa Barbara, which you got a bunch of mountains in there that's not really heavily populated other than private residential and farmlands. Then you got San Luis Obispo. Then you go up into the Sierras. But to cross over the 5 freeway into the San Gabriel Mountains into Los Angeles area, there's going to be a lot more people there.
It's just, when I'm looking at what Nikki's showing here, like, go back one spot, Nikki, if you can.
Back
One
to the Gorman area.
Okay,
or-
let's just look at this area right here, okay?
Oh.
Where that pin is right there, where that pin is, to the left or to the west of there, you see that heavily green area that looks like it has a fire trail road surrounding that area, okay? And these are isolated areas of remoteness, meaning in that one area there, you could take 30 people and put them 100 yards apart and wedge through in an hour and a half, wedge through that whole section and drive whatever's in there out. And that's where I start looking at areas like this and say, I don't get how that works where this doesn't, where this thing can just be that elusive. I mean, you could literally, with not a whole lot of, we're not talking about turning the world upside down. get a couple dozen people and go out there and start mass walking those areas and wedging them out of those areas, they'd have to cross a road or a fire road with no, they either confront you or they're crossing a road.
I just got a quick question about that one. Like, so I get this is not as thickly covered in trees, but how would you see how mountainous and like hard terrain that is, right? Not very. It's very steep. It's
Sure.
So how would that differ from areas in Northern California or Washington, where you could apply that same type of methodology to tracking something in an area and still find nothing?
I think that areas where, as the crow flies, you can't go 2 miles without running into a fire trail or a road, the probability of them existing in those areas falls drastically. Compared to remote areas where you get hurt and crawl on your hands and knees and go 12 miles and you haven't found a road yet, those areas with low human impact would be much easier to exist in and be elusive. Way 100 times easier.
So the question is, too, going back to that plane that went missing, if it's a lot easier to find something in that terrain, how come they haven't found the wreckage of the plane?
That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. To me, I don't mean to sound like the pessimist here, but you put a plane down in an area like that and you can't find it after years, it makes me think that the people who are looking for it don't want to find it.
All right, yeah.
That there's somebody's writing a check if they find that thing. There's lawsuits. I'd rather not find it, and that's what it feels like, because with today's technology, it doesn't make sense that you don't find it. Now, if you're looking at a 300 square mile section of ocean saying we can't figure out where this plane went down, I get it. When you're looking at a place like that saying we can't find that plane, that feels like complete horseshit to me.
Right. Now, I just wanted
it seems like somebody doesn't want to find that plane, whoever's looking for it. But I don't know. I don't know anything about it. So it's probably not fair for me to comment like that on it.
Like, that's so, because I lived in Ventura for 4 years, and this is an area I frequented. I frequented the mountains behind Ojai, Fraser Park, and then the spot where I got my thermal video. And out of all the times I've gone there, I've probably seen maybe twice park rangers. That's it, up in the mountains. The other times, there's only that one time I've seen like a bunch of hunters, but you don't really see that many people up in those mountains. Oh, you'll see a lot of people down the valley, like doing ATV and stuff. And that's the thing, because that's why I like researching those areas that people don't, is because they overlook it, because they're like, there's no way they could survive down here in this area.
I'm reading Raptor's comments and I can't help but laugh here.
But
he says he thinks I've absorbed the Doug hijacks nonsense. I don't get what he's saying here. What he's commenting on.
I don't get that. But there, like, where's this at, Nikki? Like the P&W?
Laird Meadow?
Yeah, I mean, it's literally the same thing. Like, you can walk those roads and drive the. I've gone up there so many times. The Bluff Creek Project goes up there so many times. I'm up there every year. I was going there twice a year for months on end, and still haven't gotten anything really. I've gotten wood knocks up there, but it just, I think on like places like Southern California, I don't think it's an area that they stay in to live in.
I think the one thing we're not considering though isn't comparing the terrain and the density and the remoteness to each other. What we're not comparing is human impact. When I hear people talk about like the Appalachian Trail, and there's people who film themselves for a month hiking the Appalachian Trail, right? And not even the main trails. They're going off of them. But they'll say in a normal day, they're passing 9, 10, 11 different people, stopping and sharing stories, things. That's a lot of human impact in fairly remote areas, right? I walk in some of the forests that I'm in, even during hunting season. I'm looking through a spotting scope at 7 or 8 square miles all day and don't see another human. I mean, the amount of human impact, especially when we start talking about areas close to LA or, Vegas and things like that, it's like,
Wait,
man,
Bigfoot, Bigfoot
the-
in Vegas is the most ridiculous thing I've heard. Where is there to hide? It's hot as hell out there. It's hotter than Fraser Park.
but like, okay, so let me just throw this in there. Lake Tahoe.
That's
very thick forested areas.
Yeah.
But you look at the human impact in those areas, riding mountain bikes and jeeping, and it's like, dude, you'd have to dig a hole 100 foot deep not to run into a human every day.
Well, if you dig too deep, you'll run into the aliens in the underground bases.
I'm just saying, we're looking at that area going, wow, that's a lot of mountains there. It's pretty thick. I agree. But the human presence in those areas would make it very hard to be elusive and unfounded for years.
I mean, if we're taking human presence into factors of Bigfoot sightings, I don't see the problem in there, because we wouldn't even have a show we're talking about tonight if it wasn't for people being in an area where there is Bigfoot. Like, you're going to have people to have a Bigfoot sighting. You're going to have
I totally agree. Totally agree.
And so it's like, you know what? And I just, if a bear can live in this mountain range, which I've seen several fat black bears, I've seen a mountain lion in this area. That same video that my thermal was on that my friend did, he even talked about, and he showed a news article of a bear that hiked into like a Walmart parking lot in the desert. Like, what the hell?
The one thing we don't get to entertain with that part of the conversation is this, and Bigfoot's not aware of this, and the bear is not aware of this. But if you shoot the bear and haul it to the Walmart parking lot, you don't make $1 million. You shoot the Bigfoot and haul it there, you do. So the tenacity those two species would put into trying to be elusive, the bear's life doesn't necessarily depend on it like the Bigfoot's. Now, whether Bigfoot's aware of that is a completely different conversation.
But Jeff, how do you keep the body away from the men in black long enough to collect the money?
I would have no clue. I think I've said, first of all, if I ever had even a finger of a Bigfoot, or I had some sort of conclusive scientific proof, the first thing I would do is find a sheriff's department that I trust, and I would go into the sheriff's department and say, I'm here with my property, and you are the last line of defense for me. Because literally, when you look at different law enforcement agencies, that's what a sheriff's department is. It is the last line of defense to protect your constitutional rights. And I would say, I'm going to hold a press conference. I'm going to do it from your lobby. And I am trusting you to not let any other agency come in here and arrest me simply for being here with my property.
Here, well, I'm going to up one you on that. If I had a finger, I'm going to cut it in two and give it to the sheriff's office, and then I'm going to stick on the other one like glue and go with it to make sure it gets proper.
If I had a finger, I would go straight to the universities. Period.
What if you find a whole entire carcass out in
then I'm going straight. So if you had
it's in a remote location, though. Do you call a helicopter?
You can't get away from an agenda at a university is a problem.
What if
they would be way interested in it.
You walk into any university, Pat, and say, I have proof of this, and if they can conclude or come to the conclusion, and maybe it's just the opinion of the wrong person in charge, they say, if we help this guy come forward, we will lose every government grant we get because they're going to shut us down and we aren't going to mess with it.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
I'm not saying that would happen,
about the
but you're talking about going to a place that exists on government money.
If I had a finger, I'm cutting 1 1/2, and I'm going to the 1/2 with Jeff Meldrum.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not getting Meldrum involved at all.
I don't think I would either.
Yeah, I would just go straight.
The first
straight to the people who are not Bigfoot people. Like, hey, look, check this out. Isn't it fucking cool? What do you think? You know, and they're gonna go, oh fuck, this is amazing. You know,
anthropology and anatomy and stuff. Like, he would be the first one I go to before I go to a university I've never worked with, or like every time I've.
Why he works at a university?
Okay,
kind of like off the books in a way.
The first thing I want to do is I want everybody off the radar who's going to say, how is this guy trying to make money off of this?
I'm going to ask some random.
Science used to exist based on man's curiosity, and then science got taken over by the agendas that write the checks. And the way that I bring this forward has to be in the limelight and standing next to the people who would help me present this to solve the mystery rather than cash the check. Cashing the check's inevitably going to happen.
Yeah.
But you can't go out to the Meldrums as your first stop, who does nothing but make documentaries and do interviews and do conferences surrounded by people full of shit. I can't go to Meldrum first.
Yeah, definitely not.
I can't.
Yeah. I go to somebody that's not in the Bigfoot world. Whatever it is, a body, a finger, a toenail, you know, like whatever the hell it is, dude, I'm going to somebody that's not in the Bigfoot world, period.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't give the whole evidence that you have to one person.
No. If you had a cluster of hairs, you wouldn't give it to one person.
It's my evidence, yeah.
Hell no. You'd keep part of it, so in case they like decide to
sure.
over, you have a backup plan.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean now
so
we're getting into the 1,000 different variables of what could be. Yeah. Yeah. I'm speaking in generalities. I'm either going to the news or I'm going to a university. In either case, both will be involved.
In my perspective, if you're going to start talking about DNA or something that could be tested to use DNA, like a finger or something, to find a genomic sequence of the source, going to anything is the wrong idea. You need to put a sample in one lab, a sample in another lab that's not connected to that. Hopefully, not even that they have knowledge of the other lab existing. And I would do that with 2 or 3 different places so that one is vetting the other in the results.
Yeah, you don't put your eggs in one basket.
No.
It depends on what it is. It depends on how large of a sample you have. I mean,
yeah.
The variables, right?
Well, one could argue that
all over the place. Yeah.
If Martha Ketchum was on a real path to wanting to get real answers, she never should have approached it the way she did with the same team in one lab.
Right. She started out not believing it at all.
No.
She didn't.
Had she put results in one lab or a piece of the data in one lab, the same piece of the data collected from another geographic area in a second lab, and those two teams didn't have knowledge of each other's experience, and they both mapped the same genomic sequence, you'd be undeniably onto something. Nobody could purge you. But when it's all done in the same shop with the same people, with the same team, you have room for collusion and fuckery that you can't be protected from.
You know, and you can fault me on this one, but it's the people I had access to. So in 2022, we found potential hair samples. So we went to Cliffs Museum in Bourne, Oregon, and had them look at it. And then, because we were going to be in Idaho, we did a second opinion and went to Jeff. So it's like we kept the hair samples, but we gave them a little piece of the hair sample to look at. So we got 2 different opinions. And again, those are just the people I had access to that were readily available at the time I needed them to be. And that's the way to do it, not going by one person. Kind of like everybody.
Yeah, but you, in both cases, you went to people in the Bigfoot world. That's your mistake.
Mm.
I mean, regardless, mistake or not, going to different sources. That's the key.
Yeah, but
and documentation.
You don't really have to worry about is much of the different sources in the scientific community. It's not Bigfoot related, as opposed
If you
to
had the
anybody in the
sample-
Bigfoot world.
If you
Is
had the
the
sample,
mistake you make.
if
Right.
you had the sample you have secured to where nobody can get at it and it's protected, you can take your time deciding where you bring it to.
Oh,
I
100
could put it out there that
Yeah,
I
sure.
have a finger and I'm trying to find the right place to put it to, and I could spend a year having that conversation till I had the right neutral scientists lined up and said, we will work as a team to look at this, and then I'd go unlock the safe and bring them the finger. I ain't bringing a finger out saying, who should I give that piece of this to? You're setting yourself up just to get screwed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you don't want to build it up too much because
then you're gonna screw yourself.
you just want to take like I don't know. Maybe I'm an idealist, and I probably am. It's just that I'm like, I have actual biological, real fucking evidence of Bigfoot. Man, I'm going straight to the scientific world, and they're not going to let me. They're not going to let me down.
I don't want to
wanna
underestimate what
Yeah.
anybody involving the government, involving anything, would be capable of doing to prevent you from successfully getting this mapped as an
Well, then-
existing flesh and blood creature. I wouldn't
Well,
want
then-
to underestimate that.
Okay,
I
then
would
I
have
go
to
to the
factor
production
myself
companies.
into being protected from that. And I don't know that going to a government-funded facility like a university or even a
And
lab
I take it to the news.
keeps you from that.
I feel
Then
like
I take it to the news, and then the news is my shield, as you know, First Amendment. Fucking, nobody can destroy
or like I
that.
said, you bring it to a sheriff's department and you hold a
Or maybe
press
that,
conference
yeah.
with the news from there. You have a legal line of defense that when somebody shows up in a black suit and says you're under arrest, that sheriff has to stand there and say, fuck you, he is not.
well, I think we
He's
all
sworn to do that.
people
I
go,
agree.
aka Todd Standing. Pretty sure he's tried that before. It doesn't work out for him.
Raptor.
I was
Fuck off.
wondering if you'd see that.
Tried what?
I haven't been paying attention.
Oh.
Fuck off.
Yeah, he's
I don't
Yeah.
need
the
Fuck
biggest
your own
idiot
here and I
out
can
there.
Your
Biggest
stupid
idiot out there.
God, you know, why did the person?
that link to the show on here.
Pat, I know you came to his defense many times.
Got
I'm just
everybody
going
in
to tell
speed.
you.
I'm not saying
He
that.
stands there and starts accusing all of us as of the money factor and
Dude,
shit. I
I'm
have
not
made
coming-
not $1 bringing anything anywhere.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm not taking that position. I'm just like
every day, every year.
ignore it.
And I only spend 1 month on my own dime to get out in the woods. And I make like maybe $50 over several months of one video.
Yeah.
I'm not
No, like,
I'm not cashing in a huge fortune of money.
No.
people have made careers out of this, though. That's
No.
the
And-
thing.
He was
Here's-
trying to say earlier that me and Doug Hycheck, I'm brainwashed. I left the Untold Network a year and a half ago. And if me and Doug sat at the same round table, we'd probably disagree on more than what we agree on, even though I think he's a great guy and I consider him a friend.
Yeah. Doug's.
I can tell you right now, he's going to do a show and entertain all kinds of ideas of paranormal that could be true. There's a reason why I'm not on the Untold Radio Network, because as soon as somebody says the word dog man, I'm coughing and saying bullshit. And that
Right,
doesn't
right.
work there, okay?
Correct. Yeah, because
Um,
what works there is clocking horses. Evidently.
Here's
Uh,
an unrelated point. If there is, okay, suppose a body is discovered and everybody gets to see it and it's accepted and it's a huge sea change of attitudes and science actually accepts the thing. The value of additional samples is going to be astronomical. I mean, there's
Yeah.
going to be increased demand for additional samples from other places. I mean, it's never going to be, the demand for samples is never going to go down. I mean, if it's a real thing, there's always going to be greater demand for additional samples so that you have.
I'm telling you, they're going to want a specimen.
Well, I'm going to tell you this.
Yeah.
If you brought forth a finger and you had a DNA sequence that shows this is a unmapped species that has part human DNA characteristics, but it is not human.
Yeah,
And
branch.
you got science to sign on to that. The amount of money and effort spent to trap one of these and stuff would be you couldn't even fathom what this world would go to the
No, they
lengths
would
of-
kill one. They would kill one.
They might.
They would absolutely kill one.
They might.
Not, I mean, you might do that illegally in Washington or wherever it's illegal.
And you know what, Pat? They'd have it done in 24 hours with the amount of people and resources they'd put
Absolutely. As a
Well,
species,
at it. The military
as a
would have it
species,
done in probably 3 hours.
And
3 minutes, right? I mean,
with
on
the
scene.
with the
you know?
with the orphan baby in captivity.
I'm going to give Bigfoot the benefit of the doubt. I'm just going to say a day and a half.
Okay. Yeah, but you at least you recognize the inevitable. My whole point to that is, as a species, if we wanted to seek out and find and kill one of these things, and they're an undiscovered primate, right? We could do that in a day. As a species together, all on the same page. We have the talent, we have the technology. We are gods on this planet compared to every other thing. If they are an undiscovered primate, they are lower than us. They're not higher. They don't build fucking spaceships. They're lower.
If some benefactor paid for every Bigfooter in the United States with the equipment that you could dream of using to comb the state of Washington or Oregon, you'd probably get it in a day.
If you could see, if you had a glimpse of the technology that the
that's
military
complicated.
has
Yeah.
in our modern day spy planes, 18 to 24,000 feet in the air, can zone in on the hair that's hanging out of your left nostril while you're standing in a forest. Literally.
Or the zit.
It would blow you away if you had a glimpse of what they're capable of.
Yeah.
It just you
Technology.
once you saw that, you'd say, dude, there's no freaking way this thing can exist and we not know about it, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, one could argue they're not looking for it, right? But,
Exactly.
and they don't really operate that much over in the national airspace and things like that. There is some training stuff that does happen.
Sure.
But they're mostly operating in that way, in foreign spaces. And they're not looking for Bigfoot. So, like, there's that whole side to thing. My point is this: the civilian technology exists to find these things if they are there.
Sure.
It absolutely exists. It doesn't involve boots on the ground and all these packs and march around in the woods, man. It's all aerial. Everything's aerial. That it's so much more powerful. A $15,000 Matrice with a well-trained pilot.
I just feel
that
like
gets
we've
you
reached the point where when we have, and we've talked about this now, when we sit at a round table and we have this conversation on the technology, the ability to have the effort, these drone teams, there's got to be a dozen companies that are flying 200, 300 drone teams at Super Bowls, at freaking halftime shows, at everything.
3 dozen companies, Joe.
It's crazy how many there are now. That if one of these wealthy people in the United States said, I'm going to write these guys a $50,000 check to fly 400 drones for 3 nights in a row over this area, and I'm going to tell you what, if they start flying it over high value target areas and they don't have something after that, the evidence is there that whatever Travis and Gimlin filmed 60 years ago is now extinct.
Jeff, you kind of just described what Expedition Bigfoot kind of did in their second.
Not they didn't do that with. Well, here's the problem.
No.
They didn't
TV
do it
show,
to
way
the
different.
extent that I said,
No,
and they certainly didn't do it with the intention of finding the truth to anything. They did it to
No,
entertain.
absolutely not. TV
No,
show, all for
I was just-
act. Yeah.
When we
Live,
started,
act.
well, you're from Florida, so
Fictional.
you'll appreciate this. When we had the conversation about the Green Swamp,
I've been
very
there one
thick,
time.
very thick area. not necessarily a huge area, okay?
Tiny.
If you took a team that could fly 20 drones at an eighth of a mile apart over the green swamp in 3 swaths like you're mowing a lawn, once, come back, go back, you've covered the whole thing. And you did that every hour for 3 nights in a row, and you don't have one of these on thermal yet, they aren't there.
I don't.
And I'll go on fucking record and say they aren't there.
I don't believe Bigfoot's.
The
Florida, there's like maybe there's maybe 10 of them.
I'm just saying the technology is there to single out these high value target areas and put an attempt like this together. And if we aren't producing stuff in short time, the data's gonna work against us, not for us.
Boycott Expedition Bigfoot. I like that. They still.
Well, Eric's gonna be doing a show about that. That he's been approached
That's what happened.
and been
There was
swindled.
a Town Monsters episode that I was a part of in Mount Hood, and we were filming there, and we were in Bluff Creek. Alex Petikoff was dragging this pheromone chip around all over godforsaken country in Bluff Creek, and we were in Oregon. I was like, hey, here's a crazy idea. Why don't you tie that pheromone chip to the bottom of your drone? And if you've ever stood underneath a drone, you know how powerful those fans are.
Yeah.
Have those fans from the drone waft down the air onto those trees, but fly low enough they could hopefully stick to it. We did that. We put it out. We talked about it on Alex's live show, and then several months later, we saw the trailer for Expedition Bigfoot. And what do we see? We see like a drone pheromone thing. And
that's the worst use of a drone ever with Bigfoot.
Finding, I was like, "Did you guys film the TV show? Did you guys film Out of Order versus when they aired?" They're like, "Yeah, we did." And then everybody,
I get your point that they stole the idea, which is weird because that's what Eric's talking about.
Yeah.
But that's the worst idea of worst ideas when it comes to using a drone to find Bigfoot. It's like, no, we gotta keep it boots on the ground. You use like pheromone chips.
I feel like going out and filming. I want to spend maybe one morning in one of these really remote areas that I'm in and film a spoof on like the Expedition Bigfoot stuff.
Oh, do it, man. Please do it, Jeff.
I'm going to knock on this tree. Let's see if we hear anything. And I'll knock and right away bringing up really loud the haunting music, that's in the background. So there's no way you can hear anything that's going to probably reply. All you hear is the haunting music. And I'll say, did you hear anything? And the other person will go, no, the music's too loud. The background music's too loud. Tell the producer to turn it down.
That's brilliant. Let's do it.
Just do a show full of that shit,
Yeah.
But you know how when they see like an orb or whatever, or a warble, it's kind of like blurry.
I feel like something's watching us, and then turn around and there's a squirrel staring at you. I feel like something's watching me right now.
But
I love it.
Like a warble, kind of a blurry thing, like you like in the movie Predator. Like instead of making like a specific area kind of blurry, like come right to left, make the whole screen blurry.
Yeah, digitize the whole screen like on Predator.
Did you see that, man? It was right there.
Be like, no, I can't see
kind of where
you.
we're at, though.
No, you'd show it to the other guy with you, and his face is digitized, and be like, holy smokes, you're blurry too. And he's saying, oh, you are too. And then it shows your face blurry.
You use
what the hell's happening?
Make sure you use
right
phone to record it. Like you get out your flip phone and I'm gonna take a picture.
I'd just love to do that. I had talked about for a long time when I went to Untold, and I told Doug was like, we got to film an intro to your show. And I said, I want to do a spoof on the Todd Standing thing. And he said, well, what do you mean? And I said, I want to pull up on like a snowmobile and go over a little jump about this big where I don't even get airborne, and I'll fall off the side of it and run up and jump back on it. And then I'll have a ghillie suit on, and I'll run across a stream and fall on my face, but yet jump right back up and start running again.
Yeah.
And I'm laughing as I'm telling him all this, and he goes, I don't get it. And I go, have you seen Todd Standing's intro? And he goes,
Right.
yeah, but so what's funny about what the spoofing it? And I'm like, if you don't see it, dude, I can't explain it. I mean,
Yeah, no
I
shit.
thought
It's
just
like, if
the
you don't get the
intro would
joke,
go viral, right? If you
Yeah.
did that.
Exactly what you're talking about. But
Oh,
have,
I
man.
love it. I love
have
it.
like somebody like from like way up above push like fake rocks down at you and dodge them as best as you can.
Or come running down the hill in your ghillie suit and then baseball slide behind
Yeah.
like a log
But
and
no,
be standing there looking over the log. And then when you get up to run again, Bigfoot's behind a tree and he like arm bars you like professional wrestling. He just takes you down.
what if you're like diving and you slide into like the creek by accident?
Yeah.
No, I mean it's I mean it's an example. I mean you guys just came up with a lot of really cool
Slide behind,
Um,
run down and
yeah.
slide behind the log. And when you stand up, your ass is hanging out because you tore the pants, your seat out of your
Right.
pants.
and so one has to ask why would that be so funny? Because that spoof would be funny as shit. Why? You know, because it reflects, right? It's a reflection of truth. It's like that's what humor is, you know.
It's because we've reached the point of really what is when you get down to the core of it, what is it spoofing? It's spoofing Todd trying to present himself as this
Yeah.
daredevil ATV rider, military background, ghillie suit, can evade a $6 million man approach to this
Right.
when he's none of that.
None of it.
He's none
It's
of
all
it.
a fraud.
No, what you should do
Complete
is
fraud.
like you should like sue the government, but like take your lawsuit to like a local Denny's and be like, I need to talk to your manager about this.
Just walk into some little shithole bar and say, "Can I cash this check?" And the bartender's like, "Who's it wrote from?" "Oh, it's for $37.50. I sued Todd Standing for, or whatever. I sued the government for covering up."
Bigfoot.
"Oh yeah, we'll cash it, but you got to buy the house around if we do." Give it to me all back in pull tabs. I don't need the cash.
Can I get free tokens for bar drinks here?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's so many ways to spoof the entertainment narrative.
Oh,
No
it's so,
shit.
Seriously.
It's low hanging
You
fruit.
could do a 1 hour documentary that did nothing but spoof
oh, so
the shows, the standings,
mockumentary.
all
Yes.
of it.
me and
A total 1 hour mockumentary would be easy to pull off.
we were in Bluff Creek, and me and my friends made this. Each episode's like 2 minutes long. It's called Squatching with Skaz. And it's about this idiot surfer from California that goes looking for Bigfoots, and he's like, "We gotta find like Bigfoots where they're feeding, and find like the wild Dorito bushes, and stuff like that." It's so stupid.
I know, but like to be honest with you, dude, like everything I see on the YouTube channels, I mean, it's already a spoof of itself.
Yeah.
Like these people are Peter Caning themselves, and they don't even know it.
Yeah.
They don't even realize it. Like Peter Kane is the ultimate spoof guy with the Bigfoot shit.
But he does everything
yeah.
to where you see his tongue in his cheek. He doesn't try to hide that.
But he's so I know, but he's still like so like
That's what makes
bizarrely
it so funny
good at
is
it.
that he's just so outgoing and obnoxious
so
with
serious,
I'm not
dude.
trying to hide it.
he's so serious that people believe him.
It's
Like,
you keep
yeah.
waiting for the Saturday Night Live laugh during the live skit type reaction from me, and he doesn't. He does not break character.
He's
ever.
the Norm. He's the Norm Macdonald of the Bigfoot world.
Yeah, he
bro.
does not break character.
Like he's just that serious, and it's how Norm, man, he he delivered his jokes in such a serious way that it like went over people's heads almost. Like Norm was brilliant, and Peter Kane's brilliant the way he delivers.
That's why I really like the comedian, rest in peace, Bill Hicks. Like he obviously was a very serious character, but like obviously behind the scenes, I'm sure he was like a loving guy who actually cared about things. But if you like listen to Bill Hicks talk, that dude, oh my god, he's so good.
Hmm?
Well, gentlemen, I think I probably should sign off here.
Yeah,
We're
I should
at-
too.
3 hours and 12 minutes. It's probably time
Right.
to end
Hey,
the show.
yeah, only 21 more hours to go, Nikki. I thought we were doing a 24-hour live stream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got places to be, and I'm sure you guys do
Well,
too. So,
Oh yeah, I mean, well, you're gonna be watching me on the forklift tomorrow. Like, hey, what's up, guys? What are we talking about now on the forklift? But yeah, Bigfoot.
Wait, Nikki, why
Yeah,
don't you
it's all BS.
just and we can just keep this going for all night?
what's that? Oh, I'm gonna end. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and end the show. You guys, hang on in the back, and I'll be right back. So, thank you guys for being here and hanging around. It's a long show. I think I'm gonna cut that last hour off. I don't know. You guys, see you in the next chat. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you. Bye bye.